So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing. I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
Welcome back to Drinking the Movies with Michael.
And Taylor. On deck this week, we're talking about global cinema.
I've finally tricked you into it. We're going to be doing The Meg, Crazy Rich Asians, Armageddon, which was the highest grossing film worldwide in 1998, and the current highest grossing film worldwide right now in 2018, Avengers Infinity War.
All movies that were clearly intended to be broadly appealing. We'll discuss if they appeal to us.
Yes. Regardless, they appeal to many people's wallets. And we're also going to tie in a series from Amazon that just came out starring John Krasinski as Jack Ryan. It's called Jack Ryan. Kind of talk about if it pertains to any of the stuff that we've found within the structures continuously of these other global appealing films.
Yeah, I don't really have any connection with prior installments in the Jack Ryan franchise. Do you?
I grew up watching some of those.
Much background, so maybe you can shed some light on if this is doing anything different.
Or I'll just make a total ass of myself and confuse whether or not something's a Jack Ryan thing.
Reference a bunch of other movies.
Yeah, the sum of all fears. That's Jack Ryan, right?
All right, so we will, as always, kick off the show with first impressions. What are we checking out?
We've got an ECS Amber that we're going to be downing. I think we should probably go ahead and take our first sip here.
Let's do it. Cheers.
How is it, Jen? Tell us.
It's beautiful. Once it hits your lips, it's so good.
What kind of beer?
That's a nice amber.
I'm pretty confident that I'll finish this.
I think I'll join you. Let's do this.
All right. So we're going to do first impressions on Widows and Serenity. We've each seen these trailers. You don't remember them. Or you don't remember Serenity at all.
Maybe this is going to ring a bell. I'm looking forward to it.
It certainly will ring a bell. Sound design is strong. So the reason that we're doing these against each other is because they both potentially have really strong performances. Mm-hmm. And they both could end up earning more than they were probably expected to make when they first began production.
Yeah, and potential awards candidates.
Yeah.
It seems.
And
for sure.
Definitely for performance, bare minimum.
Yeah.
Steve McQueen's probably, gonna snag some nominations, but it'll remain to be seen whether or not he wins a real award.
I'm sure he's got a shot at it.
So is there anything that you're looking for in these before we watch them?
With Steve McQueen, I feel like the movies of his that I've seen so far, I think I might have seen all of his movies between Hunger, Shame, and 12 Years a Slave. I don't know if he's made any others or not. I feel like you can kind of summarize what each of those movies are about in like one sentence. 12 Years a Slave, slavery. Shame, pornography, and sex addiction. And then Hunger, hunger strike. Widows, I'm still not sure what is, if there is as concise of a thing here, and I think that's fine. But it still feels like it might be a little bit more expansive or something like that than some of his other movies.
You want to pitch?
What you got?
It's The Cost of Death.
Ooh, sounds dark.
It is dark. It's called Widows.
That's true.
Anything in Serenity you're looking for?
Performances. All right, I think this is going to be performance-centric, considering our two leads are Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey, two favorites of yours.
And
I like them both quite a bit. I think we've talked before that the director is not someone we even know by name, right?
I don't remember now.
Yeah, so
we very well could have had that conversation, or it could have been about 9,000 other movies we chat about.
I really don't recall much about the plot, so I'm just gonna wait and see what it tells me. Gotcha. What about you?
I'm thinking it might be a Manchester by the Sea situation, where there's not a bad performance in the whole thing, and maybe some of these supporting roles end up being some of the strongest roles of support in the year. I'm looking for sound design in Serenity, not necessarily in the trailer, but when we go see it. And then I'm looking for manipulation of light off of surface, which you'll see in this trailer. It seems to do very, very well. So what order would you like to go in?
Let's do Serenity.
Good to see you, John. Took so long to find you. What do you say?
Say I'm not called John anymore. Sometimes we do bad things for good reasons.
All right. We just watched Serenity, the official trailer. What do you think, Michael?
First, I have to say that I am positive this is the first time I've seen this.
Really?
Yeah, this is truly a first impression.
You've accidentally missed so many trailers before a movie then.
Yeah, that is very possible. So you've already seen it a couple times?
I've probably seen it over 10 times.
No way. Cool. I'm pretty excited about it. Looks like it has some really great tension. Looks very seductive, very erotic. Performances look strong. I'll let you talk about the sound design, since that was your
well, unfortunately,
area of interest.
I don't have studio or cinema quality speakers. You know, we're not at a movie theater, so it didn't come close to duplicating that sound effect. But there's this point in time where you kind of barely hear the water, and when that happens, and you're in the theater, especially like a Dolby Atmos theater, you feel like you're hearing nothing, and it's like this roaring cacophony of like pain and anguish almost, and it just washes over you, and it affects your stomach. It's a deeply affecting sound design trailer. And then the ticking of the fishing line, all that stuff, just it builds and it builds and it builds into a feeling that is best summarized by being the exact opposite of the title of the film, which is Serenity.
Yeah. Whatever serenity these characters might have, looks like will be broken.
Yes.
Reminds me a little bit, with its sound, reminds me a little bit of the trailer for Mother, actually. Remember the piercing strings? It seems...
You're picking up on my bias, I'm hearing.
Yeah. Similarly tense.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a double bias for me because it's kind of similar to Mother's trailer. And it's
yeah.
got the interstellar couple.
There you go. All good things.
And then the other thing, did you notice that she has one too many gentlemen callers?
Oh, this...
They have some cigarettes. There's some drinking to be had in the trailer.
I think this does meet the checklist of your noir qualities.
It does seem that something's coming out of the past towards him.
Certainly does. Interesting locations. Can't quite tell where they are, but it looks tropical. You can kind of get a sense for the heat, you know? I always think that's kind of hard to capture in a really short amount of time, is sort of a sense of place, but I think I got that. Looks like that heat is going to be as oppressive as the tension itself. Could be good.
It could. It reminds me kind of the Girl in Spider's Web and its tension.
Absolutely. Going for very similar vibes in there.
Great looking film.
Yeah.
We got Widows on tap, so let's go ahead and do another cheers and dig
Cheers.
in.
My husband left me the plans for his next job. All I need is a crew to pull it off.
Why should we trust you anyway?
Because I'm the only one standing between you and a bullet in your head.
That's what I've learned from men like your late husband and my father, is that you reap what you sow.
Let's hope so.
All right, we just watched the trailer for Steve McQueen's Widows. Taylor, what'd you think?
I was surprised by how much more I heard in the sound design now that I was listening to it just from Serenity.
Yeah.
The sound design is actually going to be really good in this one too, I think. You know, I'm most excited, other than Viola Davis, for either Jackie Weaver or Elizabeth Debicki. Jackie Weaver is an older Australian actress. She normally does comedy roles, and then Elizabeth Debicki we both really liked in The Night Manager.
Yeah. The actress from The Fast and the Furious, I forget her name.
Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah, you're maybe a little more skeptical about her, right? I think you had
I'm
mentioned that one time
extremely
before.
skeptical about whether or not she, as a performer, fits into the tone of a Steve McQueen film. I've seen all the films that you mentioned earlier that Steve's done. And I think that kind of the unique thing stringing all those together is he's almost got this Danny Boyle sense of authenticity to him, where each film kind of creates its own world, like Yorgos Lanthimos does.
Yeah.
Yorgos is more of a darker, brooding, farcical world. Not to make light of his work, but, you know, Steve's is more of this really depressing realist tone, I would say. And I don't think that Michelle Rodriguez fits as a performer into that type of a sensibility.
Yeah. The director that came to mind watching it this time, just paying a little more attention to the high sequences, is Michael Mann. because some of those look so much like Heat to me.
Yep, the explosions made me think the same thing.
Set pieces are not something that I ordinarily associate with Steve McQueen, but these look pretty good. I'm pretty excited to see what he does with some of these heist sequences.
And a good budget.
Yeah, I don't think it will be upbeat by any means. Certainly seems mournful, as the title suggests. And that feeling, I think, is running through the trailer pretty hard, but I'm excited.
So, before we began, I talked to you about what these projections might look like for these films. We didn't look up the budgets for either of them, or I didn't look them up at least. So I don't know, but what do you think they're going to do? Under or over 100 million domestic?
I would guess under. Probably for both. Yeah. It's a little hard to say. It still feels like a little early in sort of the
we're taking
awards
a
marketing.
swing.
Yeah. Like, so I still don't really have any sense for like what kind of money is going to get thrown behind the marketing for these. Widows, this trailer's already been out for a while. Like, this is clearly going to get a big push. Like I mentioned, like, you've seen some more about Serenity than I have. Without knowing anything about who's behind them, it's really tough to say. But I just think it's going to be a crowded fall season. 100 million's a big benchmark for, I think, movies of this category.
I agree. I think that with Widows, though, what we might not be anticipating is something called Thanksgiving Push, where there's basically 6 days where people have to spend time with their family. And the best way to spend time with your family for most people is to go sit in a silent room where you can't talk to each other. Yeah. And I think Widows might see a legitimate Thanksgiving push. That I think it could go over 100 million because it's going to receive a Best Director nomination. I think it might be considered for Best Sound. I think it's going to get 2 actresses nominated for Best Performance and Best Supporting Performance. I don't know who yet, but I think that that's something that's a pretty safe bet. Yeah. And I think that if you incorporate that stuff, you're going to look at a similar projection to something like Manchester by the Sea. Yeah. And then when we compare back to, with Serenity, like a Red Sparrow, right? We got $116 million worldwide there. So I don't think that it's going to break 90 here domestic, but I do think that Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway together are worth the same as Jennifer Lawrence in worldwide distribution. So I do think it's probably going to break over 100 worldwide. And I think the deciding fact will be how many people remember Jimon Hunsu for his performances, specifically in something like Blood Diamond. And how good he is.
Is that what he was nominated for? I saw in the trailer that he was nominated.
He was nominated opposite of Leonardo DiCaprio for that film, but then there's, Diane Lane that's going to bring in an audience that maybe wouldn't normally see these types of things. So I do think that it has a chance, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see it with Mother types of performances. Yeah.
Early reviews can really make or break these,
Yeah.
I also wasn't paying attention to the release dates. Are they both pre-Thanksgiving, I assume? That can always kind of throw off, like, the year-end totals, right? If some of this ends up getting pulled in after the end of the year anyways.
Yeah, they always push it. So Serenity is going to be October 19th.
Yeah. I guess you're just talking about 100 million total.
Yeah.
Not like highest grossing of the year or anything.
No, 100 million. Just if it can reach that kind of, in its theatrical run worldwide, or domestic or worldwide. Yeah. I was just kind of leaning domestic first. Yeah. And then, Widows is going to be November 16th. So it's going to be out. So it's going to have a week to build a claim before everybody starts taking their vacation and going and spending time with their family. So I do think that it's going to be one of those sneaky plays.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just like how wide they go with it, how fast.
I think a slow build like Phantom did last year might be the right move here.
It certainly looks like the most accessible of any of his movies, right? Like, I
these are all great movies. 12 Years a Slave was pretty accessible. It's just hard.
It's hard, but like I don't know that it was the first thing people would have gone out to see on Thanksgiving
I can tell you,
weekend.
Hunger and Shame. I don't have family members I would show that film to.
Yeah, me neither. I mean,
those films.
As we'll talk about with our broadly appealing global movies, like sometimes the ones people end up going to see with their families are the ones that won't upset anybody.
Yep.
Widows might upset Grandma.
Mm-hmm. Peter Jackson's been making a living off of not upsetting people since the 90s.
He's very good at not upsetting people. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's been first impressions. We're going to segue into our kind of flagship reviews for the week.
That's right.
You want to start with the Meg?
Before we dive into the Meg, any like opening thoughts on globalism? Just because it had been on your area of interest for a while.
It's a difficult thing to talk about because you're either talking about the philosophical idea, the political idea, or the economic idea, and all of those play into each other.
Yeah.
And what you're really saying is the opposite of populism, essentially, right? Which is what's so interesting about domestic versus foreign percentage breakdowns. Whereas something like Operation Red Sea, the Chinese propaganda film, essentially, where they go murder people in the Middle East, specifically Muslims in the Middle East, made 99.7% everywhere except for America. And when you look into that further, it's less money would have been made in Europe than would have been made in Asia. So it's interesting how these propaganda films that are going to be looked back on, I think, in 100 years as really, really bad.
Yeah.
I think that it could really be looked at as something like Birth of a Nation's looked at. I'm not trying to like make that reference necessarily, but I do think that a film, I had a hard time watching it, not because it was soap opera, bad action, bad everything, but because it was a fairly racist film. It wasn't pointing out flaws in religion and ways of behavior. It was basically saying, China's amazing, look at us kill people. And that was fairly, not to use the word problematic easily, but it was problematic.
Not exactly in favor of that.
No, I'm not in favor of really any of the monotheistic religions, but I'm also not in favor of just brutally murdering them and making it look like you're a hero.
Not cool at all. So just kind of the general sort of like definition we're working with are like just films that aim to be broadly appealing to hit the largest audience possible and cross
so
cultural
my
boundaries.
idea of globalism for this conversation is going to be kind of a capitalistic sense of it. Meaning, how can you manipulate where there's switches and levers to be manipulated? How can you manipulate those for more earnings in a capitalistic system at a worldwide level? Right, and then we're talking about companies that are doing that really effectively. Unfortunately, we don't have them involved here, but the H Brothers are a recent production company that are doing a really good job of, I think, investing in things that are going extremely broad.
Yeah.
And really easy to pick up. But like with Michelle Rodriguez in Widows, just a second ago, I would make an argument that in order for him to get that huge budget for all those action scenes, and to kill John Bernthal and Liam Neeson and all these characters and have Robert Duvall and all this stuff, he had to meet the studio halfway and maybe cast someone who wasn't correctly suited from the Fast and Furious franchise so that they can not hemorrhage too much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you could make a similar argument for Liam Neeson, right? I mean, he might be better suited for the tone of this film, but, like, I don't think the studio would have had any complaints if that was his choice.
I don't know. I could see that be Steve McQueen's choice.
Which is very possible, but I just mean, like, that surely didn't hurt his chances of getting financing with his background in something like the Taken franchise, right?
So you wouldn't think that classically, but I would argue that maybe they would have pushed back against that. And it's not just because I want to argue, but I think that it's fascinating to say he cast Liam Neeson only to kill him.
Yeah.
That's why he got cast, so that he could be killed. And I think that a guy like Steve McQueen would find that a very cerebral prospect, whereas everyone's spending all this money to watch Liam Neeson not die somehow, and what he's going to do is kill him easily and brutally.
Yeah, that's usually what he's good at, is not dying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's kind of going against his conventions there. So I came up with this idea about a month and a half ago, and we've just been kind of rolling with it and trying to evolve it. Yeah. We've been slowly watching these titles, The Meg, Crazy Rich Asians. Then we kind of binged the Armageddon and Avengers over the last week. What does it mean to you, this conversation I want to have about globalism in cinema?
I think I was working off sort of a similar definition, just films that are deliberately constructed to reach the widest possible audience, and that involves reaching not only a domestic but international audience, and therefore considering what artistic choices mean for both American sensibilities as well as foreign sensibilities. And, I think it's an important distinction because we kind of talk about, like, movies that play worldwide as being the ones that are, movies like this, The Meg, these huge movies. which is super different from other movies that I think do play well worldwide, but they travel, the international festival circuit. That's like this whole other group of international film that doesn't get the same conversation about crossing borders, right?
Yes.
Which is obviously small scale cinema. But when you think about things that seem to cross borders and sort of, if you think about the themes that just seem to like connect us all as humans, things like love, friendship, death, we get some of these things in smaller scale movies that play on the festival circuit, whereas some of these movies seem to refer to the idea that the bigger the stakes are, the more likely a larger audience can involve themselves.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think, to me, that's a big thing that a lot of these movies have in common.
No, that
Crazy Rich Asians maybe being a different case, but yeah.
I think it's still part of the same case. It just has a different way of arriving there. So me and my friend were talking about this while we were watching Armageddon, because he's been digging into some of Bullfinch's mythology recently. So I think that his idea of that stuff came back. It's kind of like Edith Hamilton's mythology compendium. It's just a compendium of old Western mythos. But basically there's 3 ideas about what a story can be from a classical original storytelling around a campfire type of a story, oral tradition stories. And it's man versus nature. It's the original idea. Then it's man versus man. Then it's man versus himself.
Got it. Yeah.
And I think that the thing that you can find on the festival circuit is man versus himself. And I don't think that you can find man versus himself on the global worldwide market. Yeah. Whereas I think that with the Meg, with Armageddon, we're seeing man versus nature.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing man versus man, even though it's woman versus woman in Crazy Rich Asians. And I think we're seeing a kind of a interesting middle ground with Infinity War, where it's man versus man, but the man is a god, and there's lots of smaller god men fighting the main god.
Yeah.
Trying to keep him from snapping.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but if you break it down into those 3 buckets, I think that's a nice way to categorize some of these. But yeah, so starting with man versus nature.
Yes.
We have the Meg.
We do. I got to see this film in 3D.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed my time watching it. And I don't think that I would have responded the way that I did to it if I hadn't watched it in 3D. So when you logged it, not having seen it in 3D, I was not surprised at all. I was just disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to talk about a film like this. It's a diverse cast. It does everything you expect it would do. It makes the proper Jaws jokes. It casts Dwight as a evil villain finally. It's just a pleasant time. I like Jason Statham quite a bit, and it was fun to see him play the brooding hero of a film by himself for once since Crank 2, High Voltage, whatever that was.
Yeah, that's kind of his niche.
Yeah.
I think I ultimately ended up giving it a 1.5, but to be honest, like in the process of watching it, I floated as far to I floated from 1.5 to a 3. It was kind of moving as I watched
process.
it.
Yeah.
I liked the second half significantly more than the first half.
Okay, so let's just dig into the first half. Did you find suspense during those points in time when they were underneath? I believe it's called the methane sheet in the Atlantic or the Pacific Trench. I can't remember if they're in the Atlantic. No, they're in the
Marianas Trench, right?
No. Is that
right?
It's
just the only trench I know.
I think you're right. Well, no, there's the Atlantic Trench, which is like the deepest trench on Earth. Yeah. But they're in Asia, so it must be the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, so it must be the Mariana Trench.
Yeah. No, I really didn't feel much. I really wanted to. I was really trying.
Yeah, I did when the guy closes, when Hiro Yokomura from Heroes locks himself in so that no one else will die. That was one of the biggest emotional payoffs that didn't come from the kid.
Yeah.
The kid was cute and funny, and I didn't fall for it, but I had a good time with those little running gags.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of them were very, very lightly amusing for me, but I kind of felt like I kept getting told how deep they were in the ocean. Oh, absolutely. I should be clear.
You never felt it?
No, I really didn't. Like, I just felt like for these guys to be at the deepest point of the ocean with a giant shark around them, like, I should just be feeling way more on edge and more claustrophobic than I am. Like, the camera just wasn't really giving me the sense of space that I think it needed to really put me down there.
No, this is interesting. I think that this will play into Avengers Infinity War as well, where what we're watching is a film that is made for a bunch of different formats.
Yeah.
And the case is, you didn't see it in the format it was
optimized for. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like the same thing with Avengers Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting, because I did kind of feel like it wasn't like I noticed it, but it was that I didn't notice that I didn't.
I think you're just kind of with it.
Yeah. Whereas I think that maybe you noticed that you weren't feeling that.
Yeah. For something that's supposed to be this remarkable, I kind of thought to myself, I'm not having a remarkable feeling to not only be, hunted by a shark, but the biggest shark there ever was at the deepest point in the ocean. These are like hyperbolic, traits of the scenario, and like my feeling was really just not on that level. So I just kind of kept being disappointed. I'm like, I'm not having as much fun with this as I kind of want to be for what's actually happening. But that changes a little bit once we actually get above water. And I do think that's something about sharks. Like, to me, part of the fear of sharks is them, like, being beneath you. Being above water and not knowing where they are below you. I didn't really just feel that impending sense of doom as the sharks, like, supposedly kind of around them down there at the bottom of the ocean. Sort of that, like, spatial awareness was just kind of lost on me. With shark movies, you always have to kind of be familiar with where characters are in relation to the shark. That's why, like, the fin of the shark is so important, right? So nothing really about that underwater scenario really got me feeling much.
So there's this kind of classical idea that's the behemoth in the shadow is scarier than the behemoth in the sun, which I think, the shark narrative plays into that, right? Jaws is at its best when we are waiting for it to bite us, not when it's already jumped out.
Oh, yeah,
right?
For sure.
And I think that this is very much the same. And what I'm curious about is I watched Black Panther in IMAX 2D because they didn't offer IMAX 3D. And it looked like absolute trash. The special effects were just terrible, unfortunately. Like, the spaceship looked like it was from a PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah.
And whereas, like, the lush, beautiful forest looked like it was a lush, beautiful forest.
Yeah.
So it took me out of it. And I'm wondering if the sharks' CG effects were so bad that it took you out of it. Kind of like with The Nun the other day.
A little bit. It certainly didn't help. There was nothing about the look of this particular shark or its size that just really struck fear in me. And as they're descending into these depths, they're kind of commenting on how awestruck they are. I just was not that impressed with some of these visuals. I thought the cinematography was kind of murky and just didn't give me that sense of depth that I was being told they are reaching.
There's one.
I don't know how else to say it.
There's one specific scene where they manipulate the 3D format, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And you watch like this shiny fish go through this coral reef, and it's just beautiful. And then all of a sudden, there's the lurking shark in the background. But it's not the real shark. And then like the Meg comes up and eats that shark, that type of thing. And that was a really cool use of 3D. But there wasn't too much that made it great. It was just one of those, an overall good thing for me. I gave it a 3, you gave it a 1.5, half my rating.
No, I gave it a 2.5.
2.5? Yeah. What did we just talk about that you gave a 1.5 to?
I just meant that throughout the course of watching it, I thought I was maybe going to go as low as a 1.5.
Okay.
Went up as high as a 3. In summation, felt like it was about a 2.5. So kind of just right down the middle.
Yeah.
Like
you said last episode, those are the most fascinating.
Yeah.
types of reviews.
Yeah, because
you can't figure it
you
out.
end up just like with moments you like, moments you don't like. So like you put them together and it's a number, but it's strange. Yeah.
Why do you think it's performing this well?
Yeah. So should we start with box office numbers?
Yeah, let's do it. It's almost at $500 million worldwide gross.
Yeah.
26.7% domestic. 73.3% foreign.
73% foreign.
Yep.
That's a lot. Yeah, and this was one that was not expected to do very well.
I did.
Right?
I did. I made a bunch of bets with a bunch of my
Wider
friends
consensus was,
when I was watching the trailer for it, and I said it'd do over $400 million worldwide because I think that it was going to be hitting the Asian markets, and I think I was right.
Yeah, sort of the consensus that I heard was that, you know, people thought it was a mistake to try to keep it as tonally light as they did, to try to make it somewhat campy but not campy enough. People thought that they were sort of going to end up in no man's land.
That's interesting, but I entirely disagree with those people because I've watched things like Skyscraper and Rampage this year, which I think were going for that global market, but they didn't try to lighten their tone and make it fun. And I think that those two films specifically were really bad because they didn't try to do that, whereas this knew what it was doing. And that's why I didn't think that Skyscraper or Rampage would do well, and they haven't.
Yeah. Like, one of the marketing ploys that I saw, which is a fun ploy, but interesting. None of this marketing I felt was really meant to, like, instill fear in you. One of the...
There's one scene, but okay.
Okay. Well, you can mention that. One of the ads I saw in an article about how it was played in China was a punching bag in the movie theater where the head of the shark is kind of hanging down almost like a piñata, and you can punch it. And the question, like, above it was, like, will Jason Statham punch a shark? See the Meg to find out. Like, super fun, super light.
Yep.
This is not meant to get in your bones, right?
Jason Statham is their Jackie Chan, from what I understand.
Interesting. He's not my Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan's my Jackie Chan.
We live in America. They live in Asia. You know, you're taking someone else's action star.
Yeah. And
kind of making it your own, which is interesting because you'd assume like a Tom Cruise would be their guy, but they really like Jason Statham, which I think plays into the fact that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham spinoff of the Fast and Furious, I think it might do more business than the Fast and Furious films have.
I think
there's a possibility there.
Yeah.
But there is one scene that causes suspense in the trailers where the little girl drops her ball.
Oh, yeah,
and the shark does the thing. And then in the film, when the shark kills the mother whale, that was sad.
I don't remember that.
Is
the little girl watching it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Or they're just walking away and she's the only one that sees it after they find her. You know, that's
fair. Yeah.
It's a smorgasbord film. It's let's just hop to it. Rainn Wilson starts being a bad guy. What'd you think about that arc?
I thought it was fine. I didn't love it. Didn't hate it. Like a lot of things in this movie. He definitely got me. I think he got me laughing on a couple times.
He got me to laugh. Yeah.
I think I'm going to kind of forget about him pretty quick, like I will most of these characters, but no complaints. Like, I was perfectly fine with sort of the humorous approach he took.
I think he was a broadly appealing villain. I think the same thing can be said about the relationship that slowly develops through the little kid's insistence.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's one of those broadly approachable romances. And then, you know, you have your classic characters that are just there to die off, like in a good Anaconda film.
Yeah. But it's weird how there aren't... Well, I guess I'd have to kind of recall how many characters there were to begin with. To me, this isn't one of those shark movies where there's just death after death after death until you have one person left. Like, there are actually quite a few people still standing at the end amongst that crew. Just a lot of expository dialogue, right?
It's the best approachable dialogue.
Yeah. Lots of if-then statements. If you descend too fast, your lungs will explode, or something like that, versus, you know, visual storytelling approaches. Like maybe cutting to a gauge and showing us that the pressure is getting, you know, close to maxing out or something like that. Which is interesting to me. Like, in a way, you would think that if this is meant to, like, cross borders, visual storytelling is something that should translate. Like, why not try to dial down the dialogue a little bit? That's something I can't.
Are you coming
out.
up with? Were these criticisms inherent in you, or did these develop out of watching Armageddon?
No, not in Armageddon.
Okay.
Because
these things are things that happen on Armageddon. That's why I'm asking.
You think there was a lot of exposition there too, or
there's
less?
a lot of expository images instead of expository dialogue?
Gotcha.
So I'm asking if maybe that's how you noticed these things.
No, I actually hadn't even thought about that. Okay. But that's a great point. I could have used a little more of that here, and a little less exposition, a little less explaining to me. It always comes off as a little condescending, when every beat
it's hard for me to get a beat on how to properly criticize something that's intended for 12-year-olds all the way to 68-year-old parents.
I know.
Yeah. So it's almost at 500 million. It's making most of its money worldwide. It's made over a quarter of it here in America, though.
Yeah.
It's got something for everybody.
Yep.
It's going to be fun to watch at home in 3D with a bunch of people. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of 14-year-old boys get this as a Christmas gift this year.
Yeah, which is when you just want to, talk to one of those kids about it, right? Because it's so easy for me to say something like, oh, it's the kind of movie that lots of people will see, have a little bit of fun with, but that nobody will love. I'm not that familiar with 14-year-old boys anymore. Who knows? Maybe this is their favorite movie of the year. That seems very plausible.
Well, surprisingly, there's movies that aren't even on your radar that end up being some of their favorite, most watched films.
Yeah.
I think that I was reading that the 12 to 17-year-old boy bracket of Netflix watchers watches Sandy Wexler 40% more than any other film that they watch, meaning they watch it twice minimum.
Yeah.
And that Sandy Wexler is kind of like their water boy for this generation, which is just fascinating because it's Sandy Wexler. I don't know if he watched it, but it's his least bad film that he's made for Netflix. It's not great, but it's kind of approachable and fun. It's just it's hard to remember what it was like to just have hormones and not really know what you wanted in a film and just kind of wanted to laugh with your friends quite often. Yeah. You want to come home and decompress from school. It seems like that's kind of their goal. And I think that this is one of those Fast and Furious type movies that's just approachable. I think I like it more than a Fast and Furious film, though, because they weren't talking to each other underwater without mics. They had mics.
Yeah.
Whereas in Fast and Furious, they do not have mics. They just talk out the window.
Minor details. They do add up.
So should we hop over to a brief turn-off with Crazy Rich Asians? I don't know how much I'm going to have to offer other than how much I like certain characters and how much I don't really care for much else.
Yeah, this is interesting because my review has gone up slightly. Yours has come down slightly.
We settled in the same spot.
At a 2.5.
Yep.
Right down the middle.
Similar to your Meg review. These are fascinating types of films.
The consensus of globalism is going to be extremely mediocre.
Yes, it is. It's extremely mediocre, which makes it broadly palatable. Just ask Peter Jackson's The Hobbits.
Yeah.
So, what's fascinating about something like this is that I wrongfully interpreted it to be a film that would appeal broadly to foreign markets. Mm-hmm. It's done an astounding amount of business exclusively domestically. Do you want to take a stab at what the percentages might be, knowing that?
80-20?
80-20. 82 to 17.3. 82.7 to 17.3. Pretty damn close.
Yeah, that's pretty lopsided, which surprises me a little bit.
Right?
Yeah. This is set in Singapore, I believe. I'm not quite sure what the rollout was like
New York
for this.
And London.
Yeah. I don't know how long it's been played in that market. Maybe some of these are because it's still, third week or so for this film. So maybe that can even itself out over time if they're yet to launch it there. I don't know. But that does surprise me a little bit.
I don't think that rom-coms behave in a what we would view as a traditional way in the Asian markets, though. Whereas in America, there's kind of a bubble market on streaming platforms for romantic films and romantic comedy films.
Yeah.
Asia has very few, and the ones that do end up getting a lot of money spent on them end up being kind of cult classics
Yeah.
that, like, film lovers in America love watching.
Yeah. Yeah. This one was interesting because it was one that Netflix bid for quite heavily, I think I read. But they decided to give it the theatrical run.
No, Netflix didn't take it. The director and collaborative partners decided to not go with Netflix, and I think Netflix was offering more money, and they specifically went with the other production studio, in his words, because he wanted to see an all Asian American billboard for a film.
Yeah, that's what I meant. He wanted the theatrical release.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to miscommunicate. And I don't think it would have struck the chord that it has, right, if it had been released on Netflix. To enter the cultural conversation like theatrical releases have.
I don't necessarily agree, but...
Film-wise?
Film-wise, I don't know. I don't know, because we haven't had enough distance from a film like this. You know what I mean? Like, I remember a point in time where Okja was all we'd talk about for 4 months. I remember when Bright was talked about for 6 months last year, you know? And it was talked about 2 months after it came out. Not positively, but it was part of the cultural conversation in a similar way. And I you know, I think that the reason why Crazy Rich Asians is doing what it is because of the marketing push that made it so public, and that that anyone can see it and you don't need internet, and that it's released in a traditional format, and that there's this narrative of this is the first traditional format release of an all Asian American cast except for the beginning of the film. Yeah. While actually watching it, like, I will confess, I was just a little bored. That's all?
That's all.
I was bored.
Just outright bored.
I was very bored when Jimmy O Yang wasn't entertaining me.
Who's that?
Jimmy O Yang is from the Silicon Valley television show.
Who did he play?
He played the guy that would dress in outlandish clothing, and he was the one that was running the party on the freighter.
Got it. Yeah, he's fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, he's a real fun comedian.
Yeah, pretty central to me enjoying any romantic comedy is whether or not I'm charmed by the central romance, and I never really was swept up in it.
Did either actor sweep you up?
I liked Rachel Chu or Constance Wu. I think her character's name is Rachel. I liked her better than I liked Henry Golding. Golding.
But did you like
13
either?
girls are gonna kill me for mixing up his name. I liked her, but he did nothing for me.
Okay.
And I think kind of as a result, their romance did nothing for me.
I liked her more, but I didn't particularly like her either, which was disappointing to me. I expected that I normally do get swept up. I just watched that Somebody is an Idiot or something on Netflix, and I got swept up on that.
Sierra Burgess is a loser.
Burgess is
like
a loser.
That.
Yeah, I really liked that movie, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I got swept up in it, and I was having a good time throughout. I watched the other rom-com they released a couple weeks back, where it was kind of playing into the Crazy Rich Asian. It was an Asian American teenage girl that fell in. Her sister ended up mailing all these letters that she'd written to different boys. Got swept up in that too. So it's not that I don't like rom-coms. It's just for some reason this didn't get me, and I think that it's because it has so many characters.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wanted to talk about that because this is based on a book. I assume you didn't read the book. You haven't mentioned that.
I did not read this book.
I did not read this book either, but this clearly contained many characters from the book that I just felt like all were thinly sketched and not colored in, and that all the director was trying to pull more emotional weight from all these characters than he was really able to do from such thin sketches of these characters.
Yes.
Like the cousin of Henry Golding, I think her name was Astrid, who's having marital problems.
I liked her.
I did too, right? I like that performance.
That's Gemma Chan.
Is that right?
I think so.
Know. To me, like, I could just envision this being like 2 to 3 chapters or something like that. And it just felt really thin. I really liked her. I was kind of excited each time she was on screen, and I was like, I really feel like I'm supposed to be feeling more here than I am. And there's just a depth to this character and this kind of relationship history that I'm not picking up on.
I think it jumped too much. I think that it needed to spend more time to ground itself with kind of showing Constance going between her female friends of Gemma Chan and Awkwafina.
Mm-hmm.
One that she already had and one that she developed. and then kind of tell her story through that arc, and then not try to suss out all those other veins that they spend so much time on, kind of pointlessly. But this isn't for us. Everyone else, this is like Searching. Everyone else is liking this a lot more than us.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like many people are excited about representation, right? Which is super exciting. Like, I that was not the problem at all. It's just that, like, I was having trouble getting swept up in this story. Sort of on the, like, representation front, like, one thing that I really did love and that I've really enjoyed in retrospect was the music. I've been jamming to this soundtrack over the past week.
Okay. I enjoyed the soundtrack quite a bit. I thought you were going to go with the food, though.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of food porn, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like a lot of, swing music from, the 40s and the 50s. And for a movie that's as much about generational divides as cultural divides, I think that, like, actually really nicely evoked an earlier time.
Mm-hmm. And I liked hearing lyrics that I didn't know. Or lyrics that I knew in a different language. Where I was like, oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so, as satisfying as it is to just, see a full Asian cast, which, I haven't seen. I don't think I've ever seen The Joy Luck Club. I know that's the other movie people have been talking about.
But I've seen, I think, some previously to this. The hard thing is that they're saying an all Asian American cast, which means that it has to be a film out of Hollywood. And that's where it's like, I probably haven't.
Yeah.
But I've seen so many classic films kind of because of how much reverence, these film podcasts that inspired us have spent on these Akira Kurosawas. And, everyone knows Ghibli, even though that's not actual acting, that's still all Asian performances.
Yeah.
And voice acting and artistry and things like that. So it is interesting that it's so hard for Hollywood to have this representation. And I think that that's an important development. But I also don't want us to put all the bathwater in without the baby, per se, and just say representation is the end goal, because I think that this lacks a certain level of artistry that I want to see. I think it lacks an original vision that I was looking for and that I thought would be there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would agree. But some of that music, I just kind of realized only, a couple days after watching it and listening to it on Spotify. I thought to myself, like, I've never heard Asian swing music.
I hadn't either. Or Asian orchestral.
Yeah.
Right? There's a few classical, like Beethovens and Mozarts that are played, isn't there?
I don't think so.
No?
Only because I was looking at the scores, like, specifically in the last couple days as I was listening to it. Most of it's original. And then there are some, like, covers of 40s and 50s songs from contemporary Asian singers.
Okay.
But
I recognize some of the songs, though. I thought that they were, like, classical, like, during the wedding when there was, like, the band playing. A bunch of string instruments and stuff. I thought that they were playing some classical music there and at the house.
That could be. Maybe, like, there was some diegetic music, like, within the world of the film. Maybe there was some Mozart, but
not part of the soundtrack of the film, but within the film.
That could
part
be.
Of the sounds of the film.
Yeah, I could absolutely see, like, his parents playing that, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I think that it was actually people that were in the house performing for them because they're so rich that they don't use CD players, they use people.
There was one that I was going to mention as one that I particularly liked. Oh, it was towards the beginning when we see gossip spreading on screen. We see text messages, sort of...
Fantastic visual flourish.
Great moment. The song there is called Text Ting Swing. It's a great song. Great title.
It is a good title.
Really fun moment.
Prepared.
I did really like this music, and it's something that in retrospect I might just kind of lean more into if I was to rewatch it and probably get a little more out of it. On the first go round, I was so sort of underwhelmed with the relationship that I wasn't really paying attention to it. But I was sort of trying to think about what do I like about this, and all of a sudden I was like, actually, this is great music. So that was fun.
What about performances? We already talked about the central couple. We don't really like them, but there's a lot of supporting actors and actresses that are quite reputable. And some of them are very, very, very good. In my opinion, at least. I loved Awkwafina in this role.
Yeah.
I'm just 100% honest. I thought she was terrible in Ocean's 8. did not understand the character, didn't think she fit in the world, not at all. And this, though, my pitch for a sequel to this film is we just follow her around in her car, and she proceeds to wear all of her outfits. And we just follow her for a whole night where she wears every outfit and gets to these shenanigans.
That would be fun. She is one character, though, who I was honestly just confused when we meet her. Because
I was confused, too. I was
like, who is this?
Yeah.
They mentioned it very quickly. I had to go back and try to figure out, like, when did they introduce her? And it's before they even, like, leave New York. He's like, you can see that old friend.
Her college friend. Yes.
Exactly.
And then, so before we cut to her seeing her, the last thing is he's, like, in bed with her, and he says, so I'm going to go do this with my family or something, and you're going to go see her. And she kisses him and says, yeah, and then they proceed to have sex in a shower or something. Classic rom-com, right?
Yeah.
And then cut to her outrageous outfit, and then that family, right? You got Ken Jeong, you got that goofy cousin that people either love or hate.
Kind of the new money kind of thing. Yeah.
I think a lot of film critics seem to hate that character because he's taking photos of her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the brother or something.
I don't know if the jokes translate. I almost feel like we're losing a subtext by not being Asian to understand maybe that type of a constant gramming culture, if you will. That's kind of what I was picking up on, that he was just kind of gramming everything.
Yeah.
Or Instagramming, whatever kids call it nowadays.
Yeah, I felt so kind of dense when I was just confused about who these people were, to be honest. But I can absolutely see, for those who read the book, them getting very excited as his character was introduced. They're like, oh my gosh, there's Aquafina. Like, that would just be way more fun. I didn't have a problem with Ken Jeong.
That's Dr. Ken Jeong to you.
My apologies. He was funny. He got laughs out of me.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Him, Jimmy O Yang, and that cousin. Those were the only actors I liked.
You didn't like Henry Golding's mom?
No, actors, as in the male. Masculine.
Oh, literally male
those
actors.
Were the only men that I found enjoyable for performances in the film.
Yeah.
I love Michelle Yeoh, love Gemma Chan.
Cool.
Love Aquafina. So there's kind of 3 and 3 there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the women outperform the men for me.
There's no question.
By a long shot.
I think that's because Michelle has so much to do. She's kind of like a Viola Davis.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that comparison.
Aged
that's why we do it.
Many films, and she knows what she's doing, and I don't know, she got to me.
Yeah. What do you think of the mahjong scene?
I don't know. I heard everyone talk about it before I saw the film.
Yeah.
Especially that scene. A lot of people like that scene.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was a bad scene, but I thought that it wasn't good enough for as much accolade as it's getting. That I heard about it from like 7 different reviewers,
Yeah, it's one that has made me feel very stupid in hindsight, because everyone is saying that, like, you don't have to know mahjong to know exactly what's going on in this scene. I cannot say that. I was a little confused. I mean, they're showing you the tiles. Have you ever played mahjong?
I haven't, but I understand.
I didn't know what was
pretty
happening,
intuitive with patterns because of the colorblind thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of picked up that she had something that broke her pattern, and that by giving that up, she would kind of expose her neck for the kill, and allow her to maintain power, which is kind of how you would take power in this type of a situation. So I was picking up on it, but I understand why someone wouldn't. It's just I knew what I was looking for. Yeah. Because so many people had talked about it that I knew what I was looking for, and I just played enough games over the years. Yeah.
To me, I wasn't sort of as taken aback by how that scene was shot as a lot of people seem to be. But again,
how was it shot? Wasn't it kind of just a standard view and then maybe a swirl?
That's kind of what I felt. And I don't think, like, the camera work did anything to really help me understand how the
it was doing close-ups on the tiles to show you the patterns.
Yeah.
And it showed her rearranging them so that they were so that the patterns were in conjunction.
Yeah.
And then it showed her draw the extra tile, and where she put that broke her pattern.
Yeah.
And she could have, I think, kept playing, or she could have discarded, quote unquote, and I think she chose discard but
Yeah.
because she's a game theory person, she knew what everybody else had on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's super fun just to see things in movies that you just never seen. I can't name a single movie where I watched a game of Mahjong.
I don't know.
It's
Mulan?
fun to... You think?
I'm just-
Could be.
That's my,
Try.
that's
your
my
guess.
bet.
Yeah. Like, I'm always going to get some pleasure out of just getting exposure to things that I haven't seen before in movies. So I was excited about that, but I felt like the praise for that scene was maybe a little lost on me or something.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit over-exuberant.
Yeah.
I think that all the praise for this film is over-exuberant, which is good because that means that there's a bunch of people that are getting something out of it that we're not getting out of it, which is always good with art, that someone's getting something out of it, right?
Yeah.
I was getting something out of It Comes at Night that no one else was getting. I seem to have gotten the same with Mother. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So who am I to point the finger? I'm glad someone's liking it. I'm glad that guy got to make his film and that it's as successful as it is. I'm glad that all these people are getting something out of it. But I just hope that if they continue to focus on things that aren't per se exactly making an auteurist piece, that they all, instead of just trying to be inclusive, they also try to be inclusive and make something beautiful and original.
Yeah.
Because the director would be the first guy to tell you this isn't beautifully original. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
To look at. It's gossamer and shiny, and they steal that great
Very decadent
blowout ending with the fireworks.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't have something original to it, and I'd like to see something that's an all Asian American cast that's original, I guess. Is my biggest criticism, which is just me agreeing with everyone else that I want more Asian American casts, but that the rom-com didn't suit me.
Yeah, to me, this is one where the sequel could be a huge step up from the original because we don't have to reintroduce all these characters. We can let's just narrow the focus.
Aquafina, baby, one night.
Yeah, exactly. Aquafina. If we switch to Astrid, the character with the marital problems,
Ooh, I would like that.
I would love that movie. I would love to spend more time with her. It just felt like our attention was spread pretty thin, and that didn't leave me with a whole lot. But
follow her charity work,
Yeah, she's just a good
all
person.
of a sudden it turns into like a the Meg type of a film where her charity's attacked by some monster.
Yep. Broad appeal.
Got to make it globally appealing. So the thing that's joining these so far is huge casts, but where the Meg went diverse and is close to $500 million, Crazy Rich Asians went very specific to just Asians.
Yeah.
Not diverse. Do you think that that's why it's at 164 million? Because it doesn't have that diversity of cast.
I mean, I think the Meg was literally built to open in both markets simultaneously, right?
No, it absolutely was,
yeah.
but just to focus on one aspect, right? Because we're comparing a shark film to a rom-com.
Yeah.
So do you think that diversity of cast is something that brings in a bigger global audience or not?
Feels tough to say one way or the other because this just because it feels like a small sample size.
Oh, it is. We're just comparing two things.
I don't know.
We're comparing these two things. We're not making an overall statement. But do you think that because Crazy Rich Asians is exclusively Asian Americans and Asians from Asia, and the Meg has this broad, swathing cast, do you think that played into it, or do you think that it's because Crazy Rich Asians is a rom-com where it's more of a man versus man scenario, and the Meg is something that everyone can get behind because it's about all of these people that are all diverse against this thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would attribute less of it to diversity and more of it to the man versus nature and the universal fear of death.
Yeah,
nature.
This global scale of fear that it doesn't matter if you don't speak the same language. You both look at the thing with teeth that's big and trying to kill you, and you both agree to kill it together.
Yeah, which is kind of depressing to me in a way that that's the common ground we can find is that we're all just afraid of death. I mean that I agree that
background is why you're alive, though.
I agree that it is a common denominator, but it's also the reason why this isn't a memorable film for me is that I think that there are more interesting things that we all have in common, right? Like a desire for love, a desire for friendship, a desire for a healthy life.
It depends on where you're coming at it from, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's like biological essentialism. This innate need to not die from a predator and to band together is why we are alive, because our ancestors did that.
They succeeded.
And that's, built into our RNA or DNA. These are essential things that have been passed on that are extremely useful, as we'll see in Armageddon.
Yes.
To be scared of things that could kill you and then do something about it as a group.
Yeah, I guess it's that it doesn't make me feel closer to those other cultures.
Well,
or in
it
a way,
means that we're all basically the same, to me.
Yeah. But it's not something that I didn't already know. Or is in a way, like, regardless of whether Crazy Rich Asians, plays well here versus over there, it does help me understand a little bit about what another culture feels like.
Yes, it does that really, really well. I think that was the coolest thing. The music and the food, and just
I think I said that
streets.
hesitantly. I don't know why I said that hesitantly, just for the sake of articulation.
Finding the words.
Yeah.
Because you're a beer in.
I guess so. Wasn't that insightful? But yeah, any thoughts you have on why one is more successful?
Well, I think that's something that's implicit, right? We all look for snakes on the ground. There's no difference between us, but we all do it. The only people that don't are the people that were born in Antarctica, and there's none. So there you go.
Yep.
I think that fear is more profitable than love, is kind of what this comes down to. And that The Meg is a film based on fear.
Yeah.
And by banding together and coming to love each other and defeating your fear, they make more profit than just focusing on love and the fears that come with love.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's the story.
That's it. Both of these are distributed by Warner Brothers. Different production companies, but they both got the same distribution.
Yep.
Which is just kind of an interesting note.
Yeah. Warner Bros. Having a good year.
They are.
Killing it with The Nun this weekend.
Oh, they are doing damage to everyone, including us.
They got us.
Horrible film.
Life is short.
I love you.
Love is forever.
Will you marry me?
Gracie grew up to become a full-blown hottie.
You're talking about my little girl, all right?
But you never know what the future holds until it hits.
It's a meteor shower.
This new one you're tracking, how big?
It's what we call a global killer. Nothing would survive, not even bacteria.
And we're back with Michael Clark Duncan, Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Steven Tyler's daughter herself, Arwen.
And the one and only Michael Bay.
MB, baby!
We're talking about Armageddon, of course. Did you know this has a Criterion release?
Oh, I want it. I want it.
I was shocked when I saw that. But
him and Wes Anderson,
Criterion.
Truly kings of the craft.
Yeah.
Does The Rock have one? Do you know?
That's a great question. Has The Rock gotten any films through Criterion?
Oh,
the Michael Bay film. I thought you were talking about Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
No, I'm talking about Snake Eyes himself, Nick Cage, baby.
I don't know. It's a good question. Don't know if it's earned that badge.
Look for those at the pawn shops.
Yeah.
I got my Anderson Criterion collection from the pawn shop.
Ah, nice. Yeah, that's where you gotta look for them.
Yep.
Get good deals. Armageddon. Box office figures? You want to start there?
Let's do it. $553 million.
It's a lot of dough.
You want to take a stab at percentages? Foreign domestic?
I'm going to guess this is a little more split. I'm going to say closer to 50-50 than anything else we've seen.
It is the closest to 50-50 out of our titles today. But it's 36.4 domestic.
Wow.
63.6 foreign.
That's fascinating to me.
This, I think this is like The Meg. This is that man versus nature thing where people just wanted to watch Americans drill into a comet, dude.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is a very American movie.
Is. It's celebrating the oil drillers.
Absolutely, right? Like, I had a pretty concise...
Has the Twin Towers.
Does it have the Twin Towers?
Mm-hmm.
In its New York catastrophe scenes? I described Armageddon as an all-American salute to male sacrifice and populist heroism. With lots of dudes, lots of classic rock, and lots of Liv Tyler looking very, very sad. Not all of that is a criticism. I think the latter is the last one I mentioned about Liv Tyler. We could talk about her role in this. We could talk about that.
I'm very particular to Liv Tyler.
Gotcha.
But, I grew up with this film.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was 1998. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Kind of the heyday of, like, the disaster movies, right? I mean, we still get them, obviously, but I also think about, like, Independence Day. Wasn't that around?
Volcano.
Late 90s.
There's another one with Elijah Wood.
Deep Impact.
Deep Impact.
Yeah, that was around the same time as Armageddon. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah,
the Armageddon versus Deep Impact conversation.
Now they've kind of died out. We got a hurricane heist this year. We had a Gerard Butler one last year. I don't remember the name of it, though.
Geostorm?
Geostorm was originally it was originally shot in 2015 or 2016. And then it sat in purgatory for some reason. I used to know why. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
We got John Cusack's 2012 a ways back. I feel like the last good one of these was Jake Gyllenhaal's The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Roland Emmerich, who directed Independence Day. Mm-hmm. That's his thing. Disaster movies.
Unfortunately, the Independence Day of last year was terrible.
I didn't see that one. To me, this does have such an American vibe to it that it's interesting to me that this appealed as strongly as it obviously did to foreign markets.
I think America, at that point in time, was
object of fascination.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way that we look at Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
As a nation, we over magnify it and we make it more important than it really is. I think that a lot of nations, especially in the 80s and 90s, were doing the same thing with American entertainment.
Yeah. You liked it. 4 stars?
I love this
right?
film.
3.5?
Yeah.
4 or 4?
4.
4 stars.
4 with the heart.
With the heart.
With the heart. Yeah.
The heart is important.
Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler, they get me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was less enthusiastic about Liv Tyler's role.
Why? Let's just start there. The only girl in the film will just knock this out.
Yeah. So I described this as a very masculine film. Lots of dudes. Her being one of the few female characters. We're getting many cuts when they're on the asteroid back to her at NASA. Not usually saying anything, but, cuts back to her face as she's hanging out at NASA, basically. And I felt like it was trying to place the enormity of the stakes squarely onto her shoulders. Like, this was an attempt to personalize the seismic nature of the catastrophe onto one person, and it didn't work for me. It just reduced her to something less than a character because she's doing so little. She looked so empty to me. I needed more from her to feel like she could shoulder that, like, as a character.
Do you not like Liv Tyler?
I could hardly tell you, like, anything else that she's been in, but I didn't feel like it was a performance thing. It was kind of how these cuts were happening.
She's used similarly in another hugely global, successful film series where she plays Arwen.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about her. She's, one of the elves.
Yes.
Yeah, forgot about that.
She's used very much the same way, especially at the end of the film where you're going through this time cut montage of Viggo Mortensen's life as Aragorn with her. And they're just using her empty vessel and her eyes that water easily and glisten.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
And for me, it's always worked.
That's super interesting. It did work for me there, kind of in hindsight. I mean, it's been forever since I watched those movies, but I don't remember it being a problem for me there.
For me, what I'm hearing you say is that you were taking the entire impact of what is going to happen, if it does happen, is trying to be communicated through her. And for me, I was taking it as a localization of stakes, like actually grounding me in the stakes, that regardless of the fact that, the whole world can die, even if the whole world doesn't die, she's attached to every person up there. And each loss actually means something to her, because she knows every single one of the drill team. Yeah. Which we come to learn immediately in the exposition when he gets shot in the leg. that she grew up on the refineries and she's not supposed to be with one of them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So to me, that just provided basic stakes for every person's life.
Yeah.
And, I agree that that Bay is probably trying to pull off a little bit extra at the end when Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck have their final altercation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it's something that, a normal commercial piece of film would do. I think it's just normal.
Yeah, I don't know why it just felt, I just responded to the use of it here a bit more strongly. I'm trying to think about some other examples maybe of, spectacle, global stakes films that...
Shoot, you haven't seen those DC films, right? Mm-mm. So I can't do, like Amy Adams, Lois Lane.
Mm-mm. Which one? Like the new ones?
Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen those.
What about, like, Kirsten Dunst and Spider-Man?
The Tobey Maguire ones?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it's hard to, like, talk about that in any detail just because it's been so long since I saw those. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, to me, they kind of manipulate Kirsten's girlish persona and her glistening eyes to kind of ground the stakes of Spider-Man when he's fighting a big villain or could fall and die. That type of stuff.
I guess one example that comes to mind is Independence Day, just because I was just talking about that,
sure.
So that one's still in my head.
Will Smith's wife?
Yeah, and he has the kid.
Yep.
We get a little more time with those characters up front. I did respond and was a little bit more involved in that family dynamic. Maybe it's something to do with how the guys on the rig are talking about their relationship to her and not as much about her relationship to them. Like, maybe I could rewatch it and there's something there that I'm forgetting, but I think maybe I needed more from her about what these men meant to her rather than the other way around.
What I'm hearing is that you heard them talk about how much they care for her too much.
It's not that it was too much, but I don't think I got enough from her about what these men meant to her.
Gotcha. And
I mean, I think it's sort of implied.
I think you're right. But I think that's a strategy for a film like this. I think that when you title a film Armageddon, you're already looking at a 2/3 ratio at best of 2 men for every woman with a film like this.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to spend more time talking about how the masculine would feel about the feminine than how the feminine would feel about the masculine. And I think that you do particularly love feminine expressions of masculine, and I think I do too.
Yeah.
Mother again.
Here we are.
But I think that this is a film that does a really good job of expressing masculine feelings towards the feminine at a multivariant level, where we have like a creepy guy in Steve Buscemi.
Very creepy.
We have like a really earnest guy that's just doing the right thing but not really taking a side in Michael Clark Duncan.
Yeah. Yeah.
At one point he picks up this giant monkey wrench and he stops Bruce Willis, and Bruce is like, "Get the fuck out of my way." He's like, "All right, I'm just doing my buddy a solid."
Yeah.
And then there's Ben Affleck, who's the romantic entanglement for Liv. And then there's the father, Bruce Willis.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's no longer calling him dad. She's calling him by his name. So I think that if it's worthwhile to hear how the feminine interprets the masculine, that it's the same the opposite way. And I think this is one of the few films that does a good job of reinterpreting the masculine to the feminine and the multiple expressions that has, whether they're beautiful and lovely like with Michael Clark Duncan or Ben Affleck, or kind of creepy like with Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, I do think this genre, sort of the disaster genre, which I don't think the Meg quite fits in. Independence Day is still kind of its own thing, like it's kind of alien invasion, but things where the stakes are global, or when it encompasses mankind. Again, thinking about Independence Day, the heroes, they're Will Smith, they're Jeff Goldblum. They at one point consider sacrificing themselves when they don't think they're going to get out of the alien spaceship in time. Bill Pullman decides to jump in a plane at the end. Randy Quaid, he's our everyday guy in that movie, flies it up into the spaceship. It's a pretty masculine genre. I think I am ready for an interpretation of this genre from the other perspective.
Do you think that something like
Maybe there's
maybe
an example that I'm
28
not thinking
weeks
of.
later would be more feminine for you.
I didn't see that one. Danny Boyle, right?
No, 28 weeks, not days. 28 days later is Danny Boyle with Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
You've never seen that?
Uh-uh.
We're gonna have to do a zombie thing. That's a really good.
We've done
movie,
vampires.
dude.
We can do zombies.
We might have to do like end of the world films with like Children of Men, so I can rewatch that for an excuse, and then throw in 28 Days Later and find another one. But 28 Weeks Later is my earliest recollection of an actress that I love called Imogen Poots.
Yeah.
I think she was around 17 or 18 at the time of its release, maybe 16 or 17 when it was being filmed. And she plays the big sister to a little boy. And they go, not to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it for you. They keep making these 28 movies, these 28 themed movies, because the zombies aren't all dead. That's how the zombie genre works.
So this is in the same franchise as the Danny Boyle movie?
Yes.
Okay,
so it was 28 days, 28 weeks, and hopefully we'll get 28 months soon. So 28 Weeks Later is kind of her attempt to keep her brother alive in this zombie apocalypse. And it comes at it from more of this, it's not that it's not masculine, but it's a feminine type of masculinity, because masculinity as a kind of philosophical or mythological idea is more about the protectorate, and less about the maybe the consoling. I think the feminine is a bit more consoling, because you're not often worried about a predator. And I think masculine often concerns itself more with predator concerns. And so in this format, you're seeing the feminine reaction to something like that. And I think that Children of Men also is very, very feminine. And that's, man against nature as well. So I do think that there are these globally appealing films. They don't do as much business, but I think that there are, Avatar, I think, is also kind of a feminine film.
Absolutely. Yeah. Similarly, a catastrophe movie of sorts.
Yes.
Ultimately. For sure.
And the catastrophe is kind of what is overused today, but I think that the term actually fits here, which is toxic masculinity.
Yeah. For all this masculinity, which it kind of sounds like I'm criticizing. It's not that I'm criticizing. It's more just trying to describe what this movie is.
Yeah, no, and it is very interesting to express. Those.
If you're gonna have a movie with this many dudes, it's like a pretty good group of guys to be with, right? We talked about the introduction of characters in Crazy Rotations and how that was maybe less than super well done. Mm-hmm. There's the montage where they first run through what this crew is going to look like.
Yep.
That is a great montage.
It is.
In 5 seconds, everything you need to know about these guys. And you're like, yeah, looks like a good crew. I'm ready to do this. It's a solid, super efficient montage.
It is. So for me, you are really digging this Crazy Rich Asians official soundtrack, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yes. I've loved this Armageddon official soundtrack since I was 8. This is still my favorite official soundtrack of all time.
Whoa.
Because I didn't grow up when Aerosmith was becoming a band. I grew up when they were already a band, and they were kind of at the end of their good songs,
Yeah.
So this was my first exposure to almost a greatest hits collection.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it so much.
Their peak was kind of 80s, I guess, right? They kind of started in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So by the time we saw this, or in 1998 when it came out, you're right. Yeah,
if not early 90s.
Yeah.
I'd say probably 94 is where they would have passed their peak.
Yeah. Yeah. Greatest hits. Yeah.
Makes sense. To me, it's kind of a greatest hits that's tied into emotional weight that only an 8-year-old can have for a movie. That's about, things that he's concerned about. I was concerned about asteroids and comets and whether or not I was going to accidentally step in quicksand like Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Also very scary.
Doesn't happen
Universally
very often,
scary.
as you'll find out. What was your favorite moment in the film?
I think that montage was a great moment.
Absolute favorite moment?
No, that's just the first one that comes to mind. So I'll earmark that one. Do you have any that come to mind while I think for a second?
I have an absolute favorite. It's this scene that happens around the mill where the federal troops, they never really specify exactly if it's FBI or DEA or who they're using. I'd assume it's FBI. Begin to round up everyone.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Michael Clark Duncan gets on his motorcycle. And he drives through some police barricades. And that's my favorite moment. That's by far my favorite moment.
I think I liked when they were being put up in the jets to get the feel for what it'll be like up in space. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Steve Buscemi being like, "Hey man, take it easy. This is my first time, all right?" You can just picture him saying that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a fun crew. I think I'm less enthusiastic about Ben Affleck here than you are. He's not my favorite of the bunch. I would put him probably towards the bottom.
Ben Affleck's not my favorite, but he's very much an empty vessel to me here. That it's almost like I'm able to project myself into him and become him in the film. Especially when I was younger, and I felt young and stupid, like he often behaves. Yeah. Like I was smart, like I did end up making the correct decision, and I would have luck and gravity would work out that way, so I could do these Evel Knievel jumps.
Yeah, I could see that. I think I probably connected more with Bruce Willis here. I actually really like Bruce Willis here. Not that I dislike him in other ones, but just super solid.
Did you watch this when it came out?
So, from my recollection, when this came out, I always sort of pit this against Independence Day as two global catastrophe movies. And I was always in the Independence Day camp. But, I had fun with it this time around.
Okay, so you're saying that you divided films into camps when you were 5?
Not camps, but I do remember just
Independence Day
having
came out
those
in
two.
1996.
Oh yeah, pretty close together.
But I mean, we're talking about when we're 5 and when we're 8 or 7, 5 and 7.
I remember seeing Independence Day in the theater. I don't remember seeing Armageddon in the theater because I remember being terrified in Independence Day when the alien pops open.
Yep.
My dad always says, "Oh yeah, you were scared shitless." So yeah, I mean, I think like
so you don't have an emotional attachment to this film.
No, I don't remember watching it when I was.
And you might to Independence Day is what I'm
definitely. Yeah.
So for me, I have a emotional attachment to this film.
I think it's just
and therefore I am entirely unable to make an unbiased decision because I'm talking about something that I watched when I was 7 and that I'm watching now when I'm 27.
Yeah.
It's not I can't really separate how I originally felt. The nostalgia is hard with this. It's like watching Force Awakens, where half the pleasure comes from nostalgia.
Yeah. I think this is the second time I've ever seen it. I've watched Independence Day probably 20 times.
Yeah, no, this is more like Ask My Dad. It's probably the 60th time I've seen this film.
Yeah.
I've probably watched it every goddamn weekend.
I think it's 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah.
It moves. Like, it's just incredibly paced, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that there is I don't think it drags for a minute.
No, it's a nice slow elevation of we get the I think there's a kind of a cloud of asteroids that come down and provide kind of an inciting incident for us, and then we're introduced to all these characters, kind of like in Crazy Rich Asians, but instead of it being too much, they always dispense of the extra characters almost immediately and reground us.
Yeah, so really good at
who's your favorite supporting actor that didn't go? Like my favorite's Michael Clark Duncan, but I think that the argument for the best supporting actor might be different than your favorite. So who's the best supporting actor?
It's really hard not to say Steve Buscemi, even though he's such a sleaze. Like
he's a very convincing.
You feel guilty saying that, right? But like he just inhabits it so well. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you the actor who plays the Russian guy.
Yeah.
But I think he's sort of a welcome change in character feel, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, like the rest of the world is sort of like conspicuously absent from this film. We get those shots of like other countries being destroyed,
or we hear a narration where they tell us that all these other nations are also working on this project with us.
Do they say that?
Yeah.
Really? Why do we never see them?
Because it's the 90s.
Yeah.
There's no internet yet. There's no social consciousness that worries about representation or any of these things.
Yeah. I thought he was fun.
So the best, not your favorite, but the best. Who do you think the best supporting actor is?
Probably Steve Buscemi.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of question myself as I say that only because I know him the best, but I do think he's the one who has stuck in my mind the most, especially as he gets space dementia towards the end. Just, kind of
strapped to that
funny
chair.
to watch him lose it. They're like, "Yep, you're done. You're sitting tight."
It's kind of like the drunk friend you gotta pin down.
Exactly. Yep, we're taking you out of the game, man.
So you like the Buscemi brothers this year?
Who was the other Buscemi brother? Oh, Black Klansman, right?
Yep, Michael
That's
Buscemi.
Right. He was solid. Michael Clark Duncan was great. I'm trying to remember who else there was. There was the other overweight white guy who I liked. No complaints. Just not a personal favorite, maybe. I'm trying to remember who else kind of filled out the cast. Remember anybody else?
For the Asteroid Crew?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is the one NASA guy who pulls the pistol out towards the end and is ready to hit the override button or something like that and sort of take power away from Bruce Willis and team. It's kind of a good little counterpoint to the rest of the group.
William Fichtner.
He's the
shotgun-toting bankman in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Peter Stormare is the Russian. And then we get Owen Wilson, Will Patton, Keith David, Jason Isaacs, Charlton Heston makes a brief appearance. Eddie Griffin as the bike messenger. Classic.
I liked Billy Bob.
Yeah, Billy
Bob's our NASA
mine.
guy. He was your favorite?
No, I think he's the best. Michael Clark Duncan's my favorite, but I think that he's the best. I think he provides a certain amount of respectability and emotional grounding.
Yeah, I can see that. It's really Liv Tyler and how that character is kind of handled. That's my biggest weak link. That maybe I could try to recontextualize on a different viewing. It just didn't.
Did you just
right.
need another Animal Crackers scene?
I don't know that helped, but
with some cheese whiz.
Gross. There's nothing sexy about cheese whiz.
So this is distributed by Buena Vista. This is a Bruckheimer film, which I believe Independence Day might have been also. Now that I think
very
about
well
it.
could have been.
So the similarities here: huge cast, against nature, like the Meg, and like Crazy Rich Asians. It's basically, other than Michael Clark Duncan, all one race.
Yeah. Any thoughts on why it did as well internationally as domestically?
I think it's because it's easy to get behind and easy to understand.
Yeah.
There's a skeezy guy. Everybody knows a skeezy guy. Everybody knows a great guy that's kind of a teddy bear, even though he's huge and built like a goddamn brick wall.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis, I think, translates easily. Ben Affleck's,
Father.
like I said, an empty vessel. I think Liv Tyler's very much like an empty vessel romantically, where it's easy to see why she's beautiful and I think her eyes convey quite a bit of emotion.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's kind of an easy translation for any audience. And it's a basic story that no one's not going to understand. And I think that's some of why deeper cinema doesn't translate well, because it's hard to grasp with. I think, you see that in films that are reviewed so startlingly by different people. Right now we're seeing Burning get a 5 or a 1.5. We're seeing Madeline's Madeline get a 1.5 or a 5.
Yeah.
Last year we saw It Comes at Night get 5s and halves.
Yeah.
We saw Mother get 0s.
Yeah.
Or 5s. Yeah.
It's.
I think it's one of those things that treads the middle like the Meg, but unlike the Meg, has really good pacing. I think that might be part of it, the pace.
Yeah. Something like just poor construction is not going to do it when you are trying to build a broadly appealing film. I think no matter what culture you put it in front of, if it's ill-paced, if the acting is poor, I think those things do matter. So I think the pacing plays a big role here, as well as just the simplicity of the narrative. Asteroid is headed towards Earth. We're gonna nuke it. That's it. We just gotta nuke it, and we're done.
It's pretty easy to live on Earth and care about that idea.
Pretty much, yeah. Which really sort of leaves it to the director to make it an interesting experience, which I think he does, kind of set piece wise. I think it's a pretty visually exciting and interesting movie.
Especially when we're in the rover, when we're finally in space. And he's got to make that Evel Knievel jump. I found that pretty gripping.
Yeah. Steve Buscemi calls the nightmare something like, Dr. Seuss's Nightmare or something like that. I'm like, yeah, this thing looks terrible. That's exactly what I would describe this as. Again, really simple kind of design, but effective nonetheless.
And easy to translate and interpret.
Spiky and daunting.
I mean, I was 7 and I loved it. So, and I'm 27 and I love it. So I think it translates. Yeah. I think that's what that means. It translates. Yeah, I memean, we talked about it a little bit, but it's like it has to be, simple enough to appeal to a broad age. There's nothing here that, a young kid couldn't understand. Well, there's some things like that strip club scene, but
sexuality wise, yeah, and I do think that's one thing that the Meg very carefully avoids, which is kind of interesting. There's a shirtless scene with Jason Statham, and she says, "Oh, you're naked," and
then she's leering at him from behind the hole, I think, as well.
Yeah,
and then there's some midriff shots, the classic midriff, when they're showing extra characters on the boats.
Yeah. Yeah, but it really toes the line, unlike Armageddon.
Which is Michael Bay and all of his Victoria's Secret fashion show shooting ecstasy.
Yeah. We're talking specifically about Asia, which, obviously is a big market, but more country specific. I don't know. I wouldn't profess to know how some of that sexuality would hit in different countries, but it does seem like the Meg is particularly safe in how it plays in.
Yes.
And the Armageddon is not particularly restrained, but succeeded nonetheless. So
it's very atypical for Americanism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very much just beer, working oil rigs, and girls.
Yeah. Just enough said. Yeah.
That's Michael Bay's
backbone. I don't know what else to say.
I nailed it.
Pretty much. Yeah, you gave it a 4. I gave it a 3.5.
Nostalgia plays hard.
In time, you will know what it's like to lose. To feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail all the same. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny still arrives.
So should we hop over to the highest grossing film 20 years later, this year, 2018.
We have arrived at Avengers Infinity War, directed by the Russo brothers, correct?
Correct.
Featuring an army of actors and actresses.
Yes. The true army, though, if we are going to speak in these types of platitudes, are the visual effects artists.
Ooh.
Them are the heroes.
We are coming at this from very different angles. You having seen this 5 times?
Mm-hmm. Including that showing, yeah.
In every installment in the franchise?
At least twice. No, at least once, because I only saw that bad Doctor Strange movie once.
Yeah. I saw 3 to 5 of the film's predecessors, and this was my first time watching it.
Yeah, I think this is number 22. I think Ant-Man's and the Wasp is 23, so I think there's 22 films, so you saw less than a fourth, probably, of the films leading up to this. Yeah. You saw the film immediately preceding it, though, Black Panther.
I did, which I was really hoping was going to play a bigger role, just so I knew what was going on.
It did play a pretty big role by the end. So you saw Iron Man, the first film in the series.
I did. I saw the first Thor.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth Branagh.
I think I saw the second Iron Man as well, actually.
Okay. So both were Favreau, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Both of Favreau's films, and then Kenneth Branagh's, and then Ryan Coogler's Black Panther, and now the Russo brothers' Avengers Infinity War.
Part of Doctor Strange, but not the whole thing. Not enough to really take much from it.
Yeah, I think you asked me what the Sanctum Sanctorum was beforehand, or who Benedict Wong would be.
Yeah. Similar to Armageddon, despite this army of characters, pretty simple narrative. Even
you've never seen a film with the Hulk?
No. Well, I think I might have saw the first Avengers, because I've definitely seen something with Mark Ruffalo in it.
Okay.
There was Avengers. I know. God, there have been multiple
Marvel's
Avengers movies.
The Avengers.
Is that what the first one was called?
The first one, 2009, I think.
Who was the villain in that?
Maybe it was 2012. The villain in that was Aliens from Space? Or it was Loki?
Might have been Loki. I've definitely seen Mark Ruffalo. He was familiar to me. So
Hulk was in Avengers. So yeah, that's where the transition from Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo happens.
Yeah. So the way I put this in my review was that it was like walking into a party and not knowing anybody.
And walking into a party 6 minutes after it started and not knowing anybody.
Exactly.
Because
some familiar
you came
faces.
Did you come in after Heimdall got killed?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. So you came in, when Thanos was leaving space with his smorgasbord of baddies.
Yeah. It was just as he was getting ready to leave wherever they were. So
you saw him kill Loki?
Yes.
Okay. Before that, he kills Heimdall, which is Idris Elba.
Oh, got it. Okay. I know Idris Elba. But again, we talked about narrative simplicity. Thanos wants all 5 Infinity Stones. The Avengers got to stop him.
And why does he want all 5 Infinity Stones?
Because that gives him lots of power. That's
absolutely incorrect. You did not pay attention to the film. You are letting me down greatly in your film criticism at the moment. Do you know what happened when he snapped his fingers?
At the end?
Yes. We are going to spoil this.
Everybody started dying?
Oh, no, they ceased to exist.
Yeah, they started disintegrating.
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't actually get killed. They just never existed. Or that's kind of the basic idea, that they're broken down at like a molecular level and decayed instead of having to suffer, I guess. But it's the idea. The goal for him is to neutrally kill half the population.
Neutrally? What do you mean?
Without, splitting people up into groups like Nazis would. And exterminating some and not others because of race or gender or something like that. Neutral as in just kill half randomly based on an algorithm, essentially. And let half live randomly.
Got it. Yeah.
And that's illustrated within the film when we should see these flashbacks of young Gamora on her home planet, and they separate them, and then one side is given the executive kill order, and one side isn't.
Yeah.
That's the thing, so that he can snap his fingers. Because when we have that final encounter with him on his home planet, and he tells us about what happened, he doesn't want what happened on his planet to happen to the rest of the universe.
Got it.
And he's the only one that is willing to shoulder this burden.
He wants the division to be arbitrary of who dies and who lives.
Yes.
Got it. The Avengers fall in that camp.
No.
Right? Don't all of them die? Except
the originals.
Samuel L. Jackson, Kobe Smulders. I don't know that character's name, but as well as Captain Marvel, I assume.
No. Kobe Smulders and Samuel L. Jackson disintegrate at the end.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That was just the after-credit sequence, but then they
before that, we see basically half the Avengers disintegrate. And it's essentially the half that isn't the original Avengers.
Got it.
So all the newer introduced characters, Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange, what's the kid's name? Spider-Man. All those guys.
Iron Man's still around.
Disintegrate. And then we get Tony Stark still. We still get Steve Rogers. We still have the Hulk. We still have Scarlett Johansson. All those people still live.
Yeah. You're right. Got it. You're right. It is tricky. Paying super close attention, to just narrative momentum, was just hard. I'm more focused kind of on set pieces, and the moment-to-moment feel, just because I just was not expecting to have any sense of relationship dynamics or character histories or anything like that.
What it does is it pays off 21 previous stories.
Yeah.
All at once.
Yeah.
quite effectively. But
that's a big statement. That is a full day's worth of watching. That's more than most TV. Do you think it earned it?
That's more than a day.
22 hours. There's 24 hours in a day.
No, 22 films.
Oh, 22 films. Yeah. You're right. Okay. Much more than
like
a day.
4 days, dude.
Correct. So you think it earned the payoff was worth it? Would you do it all over again?
Next year, no. Because they're going to undo all of it, right? Next year, they're going to undo everything that we just watched. But right now is a really fun time to be in this universe and know that, half of them just died. They killed Samuel Jackson before he could say motherfucker in a Disney movie. It's a fun, just a fun moment. I don't know how, Captain Marvel and the next one's going to shake out. But, as much as I didn't like Black Panther, I'm glad it's there. And I think that it was a worthy... I think it's definitely deserving of having a place in the universe. It's just I gravitate more towards those Ant-Man films just because they're basically comedies.
Oh, yeah, Ant-Man isn't here, right?
No, he's
Where was Ant-Man? I saw Ant-Man.
Him and Jeremy Renner are in house arrest at this point in time.
Got it.
Because of the Paris Accords or something like that, which is where the superheroes agree to reveal themselves and no longer be heroes to avoid jail time, and they gotta go under house arrest. I don't remember exactly why. It's
Paul Rudd's just following the rules.
Yep. Him and Jeremy Renner. Yeah.
I like that. I can respect that.
But basically, huge cast, diverse cast, go all over the world, go all over space. What's interesting is you'd never seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Is this correct?
No.
So that's kind of almost 1/3 of the film.
Yeah.
Minimum, because of the emotional gravitas that Zoe Saldana's Gamora is bringing.
Yeah. It's really sort of like amongst this large cast of characters, who am I kind of like most interested in? Who would I kind of like want to spend the most time with?
Who were you the most interested
in? Thor. It's probably just the characters that I didn't know, to be honest, right? No. It's the ones that I was most attached to already. Not that I was attached, but...
That's a worthy criticism for me, because Thor's the character I'm most attached to. Classically, that was when his movie came out. That was the movie that I had to see that opening day. No matter what. That was the one that I'd been waiting for a long time to get my Norse hero in a movie. But I think that he is the funnest character in the last couple of years because of the growth. I liked the second one, though. Most people hate the second one.
Yeah.
But Ragnarok had some pretty good backers behind it. I didn't enjoy it once we exit through the Devil's Butthole, which unfortunately you don't get to know what that means.
I don't know what that is, but I'm intrigued.
Oh, it's kind of like a black hole in a star.
Got it.
It's called the Devil's Butthole. It's great.
Like it.
Also, one of your favorite actors from Independence Day,
Jeff Goldblum.
Chest Hair himself is a king. You get Cate Blanchett.
Yeah,
you also get an actress you liked previously this year, and Sorry to Bother You, and Tessa Thompson.
No, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, she plays a Valkyrie. It's
solid.
A pretty solid film, and you also get Mark Ruffalo as Hulk.
Do you have to have seen The Dark World to appreciate it?
Not at all. It's very much a standalone.
That's nice.
But it's kind of... I think that other than Guardians of the Galaxy, it plays the most into what ends up happening in this film.
Yeah.
As far as Hulk, or Mark Ruffalo's character, Bruce Banner, not being able to transform into Hulk, and how that affects what comes to pass, and then why Thor is without an eye at the beginning, and why he has to go get this new Stormbreaker axe from the giant dwarf.
Yeah, his intensity was maybe the most credible and persuasive for me, but that's perhaps just because I do have a little bit more familiarity with him. Same with Iron Man. So should we
rank our Chris's?
Are we gonna do this?
We might have to.
We're gonna pause and rank our Chris's?
We might just do it live. From New York, it's Rank Your Chris's.
Alright, I gotta prepare myself.
Shake it out. Shake it out. Alright. So we got Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine, Chris Pratt, Chris O'Dowd. Who's the other Chris? There's 5 Chris's.
Messina.
No.
Did you say Messina?
No, we can't have Messina. We have to go off Film Spotting's Chris's.
Oh, I thought he was in there.
No,
he didn't make the cut.
He didn't make the cut.
That's gonna throw a wrench in my planning here.
Chris
Evans?
Yes, Chris Evans is Steve Rogers.
Oh, Captain America.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Would you like to go first? Or second?
I'll go first. So you have a second. Chris Hemsworth, number 1.
Thor.
Yep.
Got it.
Chris Pine, number 2. Chris Pine, number 2. Chris O'Dowd, number 3. Chris Evans, number 4. Chris Pratt, number 5.
Okay, we have some similarities here. Chris Pratt would be my number 5. I might jump around here. Chris Pine would be my number 1. Chris Hemsworth would be my number 2.
You haven't seen Black Cat, that's why.
Yeah, that's true. Chris Evans would be my number 3. Chris O'Dowd would be number 4.
But
that's more
you're not an IT Crowd fan yet.
I'm not. I am less familiar with his work.
I'll get you there.
But that's interesting. So, continuing with Avengers and talking about Chris Pratt, are you a fan of him in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and this one? Because I was not a fan of him here at all.
In this, he's terrible. The Russo brothers have admitted that they tried to use an emotional backbone that hadn't been fully developed by James Gunn yet, and now it never will be because James Gunn has left the project, unfortunately, at Disney's insistence. And unless Taika Waititi were to take over, I don't know that I want to see another Guardians film.
Yeah.
Taika did the Thor Ragnarok film previously. But with Chris Pratt, he's at his best when... I think he was at his best when he's fat.
Yeah.
Because he was more goofy and eccentric then, and he wasn't worried about his image.
Yeah.
And I think that now he's just kind of shifted since he's kind of become a Hollywood star into a performer that I don't gravitate towards as much.
Yeah. I
still appreciate that he's, able to do what he's able to do, that he works as hard as he does. But I don't know. It might be too big for him.
Yeah.
That's never fun to say, but when you make Jennifer Lawrence seem kind of bad in a film, I think that maybe the onus can be put onto you. Because she hadn't really been bad in a film since, 2013, I want to say.
Yeah.
Until last year's, what was that called that he was in with her?
Passengers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. She wasn't bad, but it was the first time that her role kind of got there for me.
Wasn't good.
I know other people didn't like Joy, but that was the first time for me that her performance broke down.
Yeah.
In a serious way. And I don't know that he's suited for non-sitcom acting. I think that that's almost a compliment, though. To me, he's more of a Ted Danson.
I could not agree more. That sounds like it's derogatory or something to say, he should stick with sitcoms. I cannot tell you how much joy his character brought me on Parks and Rec, and how much I prefer him in that mode.
Yes.
I just don't think he has the charisma to carry a film in the way he's trying to here. Not that he's carrying it. There's an army, as we've said, but I just could not connect with his level of confidence that he's trying to project. It just felt kind of painful to watch it in a way, and disappointing.
To me, he needs the Hovey Doyle treatment from the studio. He needs to be retooled. His image needs to be retooled.
Yeah.
And maybe he needs to, just be transferred into more of a goofy, waspy type of a character for Alex Ross Perry, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was almost thinking more about how Channing Tatum's career has kind of gone. He's retained his appeal, his sex appeal, right? I think there are plenty of women who find him attractive.
I think it's hard to take away the sex appeal of someone like him and Ryan Gosling.
To take it away?
Yeah, I don't know that you can take away their sex appeal. I think there's something about them that is just sexy.
Yeah.
Gosling did Lars and the Real Girl.
Yeah.
And they still think that he's super hot after Drive and Only God Forgives.
Yeah.
His directorial debut that everyone hates, essentially, besides me and 4 other people on the internet.
Yeah.
There's just something kind of quintessentially sexy, I think, about probably the cut of their chins and their frames, just their very bone structure. that maybe Chris Pratt has, but I don't think that he has that when he performs, and I think they do when they perform.
Yeah, we don't get many shirtless people in Avengers, unlike, say, Jason Statham in The Meg.
No,
I'm trying to think about, like, if sex appeal does play a role in these movies, what
it would
role
be the
does it
skin
play?
tight clothing choices for
it's costume design. Yeah,
for them. You know, like I think some people complain that Scarlett Johansson is overly sexualized, or that Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch is overly sexualized. But I also think that if you were to make that comparison, then you'd have to make it for T'Challa.
Oh, yeah.
You have to make it for Steve Rogers. I think that it's kind of equally sexually magnifying these characters.
Yeah.
And I think that you should. You know, we're talking about a film with a $400 million budget.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, people want to look at things that they find visually appealing. That's how you make money.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is more superhero stories out there, perhaps, where physique is deprioritized, but
like Shazam.
What is Shazam? Because when you say that, I'm thinking of the Shaquille O'Neal movie, which I don't think is what you're referring to.
Shazam is a DC film. It's going to be coming out with the actor from Chuck.
Oh yeah,
Do you remember the Fox Chuck series?
Yeah.
He bulked up.
Okay.
And has a startling physique, and basically a young boy can say the word Shazam and turn into kind of a macho man G.I. Joe type that is impervious to bullets.
But that sounds like physique does play a role.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was mocking you, but
now I'm explaining. I see. Now I'm with the joke.
Yes, this is just a comic book nerd making fun of a non-comic book nerd.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of thinking about like Samuel L. Jackson's character in Unbreakable. And Glass, yeah.
Mr. Glass, yeah. But I think that physique does play a role there, just in the opposite context.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, physique is still like a conspicuous trait, but it's reversed, right?
Well, no, it's I mean, maybe with the way that you're looking at it, but for me, because I know what that comic book universe world that he's building is, he's taking a stance on physiques.
Yeah.
And he's using incredibly dominant masculine physique in James McAvoy.
And Bruce Willis.
And in Bruce Willis, he's using a dad bod.
Yeah.
And then he's using kind of a weakling in Samuel L. Jackson's role. Yeah. No, I don't think Bruce Willis is masculinized too much. I think that the idea of him is, but I think that his actual look is very just normal, average Joe dad. He wears a poncho for much of Unbreakable.
He's as demasculized as Bruce Willis can be, I guess.
I think it's properly pronounced demasculinized.
There it is. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got off on male bodies for
Channing Tatum's hot. What else can we say? The end.
We were talking about Chris Pratt, and whether or not he's effective here. And it sounds like we were both in agreement that he's not so effective.
Yeah, it's really hard with him though, because he's being asked to provide, I think, what you thought Liv Tyler was being asked to provide in Armageddon. And I don't know that. I think that even you don't know if that's truly what she was being asked of, or if that's what you were projecting onto it.
It's just what I felt.
Whereas with Chris Pratt, he was being asked to have a relationship with Zoe Saldana that would provide a reason for why the Avengers would fail when they had already essentially won, because he cared for someone so much. And the previous two films did not build up to that point. They didn't build up to such a point.
Yeah.
Everything else about the Guardians of the Galaxy, absolutely believable. Rocket, Groot, Drax, Mantis, exactly how they go. Nebula fit into her character perfectly. Nebula was the girl being tortured by Thanos, who's played by Karen Gillan.
Oh yeah, one moment that actually hit me pretty hard. I felt that quite a bit.
Yeah. She's a great fucking performer.
Yeah, and it's just one of the more visceral images for me.
Yeah, when you come in and it's kind of 2D, like she's just a normal person, then we spin to sideways, and she's stretched and all her parts are broken down. So something that you don't know is that she was originally just a normal girl. And Thanos began to cut her body apart and insert things because Gamora was so much better than her. And he wanted her to be able to compete with Gamora. They're both his daughters. And so there's an interesting contrast of these two characters, of Gamora and Nebula, that you didn't get to see. You just got to see them and their sisterly bond. Yeah. Which is not at all how the other films were presented. They're essentially enemies for the previous two films.
Yeah. Yeah, for a movie where a lot of the fight sequences, it's hard for me to kind of understand, like, what hurts and what doesn't. That's one instance where it was pretty visceral. I was
agony.
Like, yeah, for sure. Good moment. Overall, I don't have a lot more to say. Any
we've basically skipped the entire like New York sequence. We've skipped the your experience with Spider-Man for the first time. The Sanctum Sanctorum, whether or not you think the stakes are real, whether or not the Scarlet Witch and that entire sequence played out for you, whether they were in Edinburgh or in where's the African country? What's that called?
Wakanda. Yeah. I mean, I can't say
Is
that
this the Meg for you?
I think I give it a slightly lower score than the Meg.
Yeah, but you know what? Just general indifference.
Pretty much.
So you never got a spine tingle?
No, I got more spine tingling from the Meg than this movie, where a lot of the action sequences left me a little too confused about kind of what hurts and what doesn't, what a punch feels like. I think to me, it's tough with movies that sort of up the stakes to a point that it's hard for me to relate to.
And you, so for everyone that's seen all the films, we know who's more powerful than who.
Yeah.
There's a reason why at the end when they open the gate, in the open the gates, you know, they open the gate in Wakanda. Mm-hmm. Do you remember who were the fastest men in the battlefield?
As they start charging at each other? Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you who's at the front of the line.
See, that's like a critical moment that I think you have to be more invested in these characters. Not just necessarily having seen them, but I think you do have to care about them. I think it does. Yeah. These films, when they're at their best, I think that the audience is, or at least I'm doing a sort of hero worship, where I'm getting something that someone that's just as familiar might not get just because they don't care as much. But it's T'Challa and Steve Rogers that are the fastest. Because one of them is injected with a serum and one of them performs a ritual to literally change their biome to become otherworldly. Yeah. And they are the most powerful characters on the battlefield until you get a literal god.
Yeah. Thor. Yeah. I guess I'm not terribly interested in like going back and doing the work to get invested in this, because I think I had the same kind of problems with some of the films that I have seen. Like I think I had that same problem with Black Panther. Where the action sequences don't feel terribly emotional to me.
I had that problem with Captain America Civil War and Black Panther. Yeah. Black Panther didn't work for me either, and neither did Captain America Civil War, which is a previous Russo brothers film. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's I think you should watch something like Spider-Man Homecoming. And if you can be invested in that, then I'd, start with that, go to Ant-Man, if you like that, Ant-Man and the Wasp, kind of go with your tendencies. But I think that someone like you would have to like Spider-Man Homecoming because everything is grounded. Nothing has super otherworldly stakes. Everything's smartly directed. You get Michael Keaton as a Birdman. His character is Vulture.
I've heard about him,
And it's just, I think, really well done.
Yeah.
So I think those human stories you'd gravitate towards.
Yeah, absolutely. One movie that we haven't talked about, which box office-wise may have earned a place in the conversation had we just gone a different direction was Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yes, but we already talked about it.
We did already talk about it. I think if there is something about broadly appealing action-based cinema, that's probably what I'm going to gravitate towards first versus comic book movies.
Do you think that
the pain feels more relatable?
Do you think if Tom didn't do his own stunts, you would find it that way?
Absolutely. I've never cared about that. There's so much talk that is, to me, that is purely extra textual. To me, it's choreography that has always meant that's always barely meant a thing to me.
You say that, but I think that if it was stunt work, you wouldn't see the same shots that you're seeing in the film that ground you with Tom and his risks. Because you're never not really seeing him. I think that provides an extra layer of grounding.
Because I'm not really seeing him?
Because you're never not seeing him.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about the end result, regardless of the means to the end. If a same film can achieve that same effect and not have an actor do their own stunt work, then it doesn't matter, right? So to me, it's beside the point. It's interesting for the sake of just learning about films, how films are made, learn film history. Like, that's fun to know. That's fun to learn. But the experience itself, if you can do everything you can do in Avengers and not have to have all these actors play with tennis balls, then it doesn't matter. It's the immediate experience that counts.
So the more human it is, the easier it is for you. Whereas the more demigod and full god that it gets, the harder it is for you to find the emotional weight and stakes in.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Which is interesting because I don't think I've fully teased this out. Lord of the Rings is something pretty different, where I very much feel those movies, but we are talking about similarly very large stakes and sort of abstract characters like a Sauron, where I really do feel emotionally involved in those stories, which I think is somewhere, between what a comic book movie does, what something like a Mission Impossible does. It's more in this fantasy realm. That's sort of a different kind of experience. It's probably a different episode.
Well, what I'm hearing is that you find Lord of the Rings more grounding.
Definitely. Yeah.
Than a very similar film in Avengers Infinity War in its idea. Yeah. And I think that the reason for that is because all of those characters are essentially human, and the extra human characters are hemmed to the edges like a Ben Foster character.
Yeah, yeah.
And instead of you looking at them like you look at Thanos the whole time, as a normal person, they're like a good shark. They're under the water. You only see the eye. You only see the fin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more about what you don't see than what you do see. Whereas you see a lot in Avengers. Yeah. Kind of an interesting distinction, I think. But I don't know enough about the Marvel franchise to know like what's going to happen after this next Avengers movie. If we're just going to keep going, this seems like an apex. Are we fully expecting to continue on?
I think they're going to kill at least Steve Rogers, probably 2 other characters, and bring back everyone. So, like, 3 characters are going to sacrifice themselves to take down Thanos in a time warp continuum or something. And then, because you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, you don't know about the quantum realm yet. Which will certainly play into it. But, it's basically just going to recycle and continue.
Will you stay with it?
It depends on how long A-List continues offering IMAX.
You hear that, AMC?
Regal, you got competition. So who's your favorite character that is non-CG, and then who's your favorite CG character?
Thor is my favorite non-CG character. My favorite CG character. Can you list some of them for me? For my own recollection?
You got Groot, you got Nebula, you got Thanos, you got Rocket.
Rocket is the raccoon.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, probably the raccoon. I was like, that guy seems pretty cool.
We got the same duo.
Do you?
Yep.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep.
See, after all that, we came out with some similar choices.
We ended up liking the same Chris, and we ended up both liking A Star Is Born.
Yep, there we are.
And the Rocket himself.
Yeah, I could see him being fun in the other movies.
So this is the highest earning film of the year. I think it's number 4 all time. Let me check here. 5. No, 4. Yeah, so we got Avatar, 2.7 billion. Closer to 2.8, really. Titanic, 2.2. Star Wars Force Awakens, 2 bill. Avengers, also 2 bill.
All
pretty goddamn crazy.
Yeah.
The next closest is Jurassic World at 1.67.
Which you were not a fan of, correct?
The original I thought was better than the sequel.
Oh, not Fallen Kingdom.
Not Fallen Kingdom.
The other one.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah.
And then all the way down, really far down, no money at all. Number 9 is Black Panther with 1.34.
1.34 billion.
Barely any money.
It's a lot of dough.
So, what's similar about all these is they're all really easy to interpret. They all have large casts, whether we're talking about what we just talked about or these highest earning ones. Yeah. Large casts, computer effects, ahead of their time, some would say, and a very easy to latch on emotional stake. Yep. You know, whether or not you think that Armageddon has human stakes that are really grounding, I think that you'd agree that the implicit destruction of mankind grounds you immediately, and most typical audiences.
It's a scary thing for most people.
Yeah.
Do you have budgets on there as well, or no?
I have budgets for the films that we have discussed.
Gotcha. Yeah. What was the most expensive?
You want to take a guess?
Between The Meg, Armageddon, and Crazy Rich Asians? And Avengers. Oh, I'm going to go with Avengers.
You want to guess how much?
300 million?
The low end is 316. The high end is 400 million. That's one of the few films on Wikipedia that had a range of a budget.
It's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Yeah. You want to guess the next closest?
Armageddon? No, The Meg?
Mm-hmm. It's got a range of 130 to 178. Whereas Armageddon comes in at 140.
Interesting. Okay.
And $110 million beneath that at a very small, paltry sum of only $30 million as Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I think you'd absolutely see a relationship between budget and box office if you were to do that in general, as well as just how big each of these goes, right? I think they all went wide immediately, but I think that I've read that that's the number one indicator is
if they go
how many screens you open on. That's the best indicator of success.
Yeah, I think Phantom Thread's a weird case where I don't know if it really made that much, but I love that release strategy where it built up anticipation slowly and deliberately.
Yeah. On a different episode where we're just hating ourselves, maybe we could go with like blockbuster misfires.
Oh gosh.
Like Jupiter Ascending.
I like that movie. Okay.
No.
Can we do Speed Racer too?
Oh, that's one that wouldn't even come to mind. Gosh, what was the Disney one? It had a guy's name as the title.
John Carter.
John Carter. Oh yeah, another infamous miss.
That's good.
The one with Johnny Depp.
The one with Johnny Depp as the Indian?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that movie.
It's another classic example. Different episode.
Yeah.
Why these don't
I
work.
like all of those movies. So we can talk about why they don't work for you and why I like them.
I haven't seen any of those movies.
So I have a list of possible top earners. Just kind of, these are going to be coming out before 2019. Just pick 5 that you think are going to be the top worldwide off the list.
Let's take a look here. I think, as you already suggested, Fantastic Beasts number 2 would be high on your list. I think it would be mine as well. Looking back at our list of high earners for all time, Star Wars is one kind of interesting example because it's a very long-running franchise, unlike some of those other ones, which I think Fantastic Beasts obviously has going for it. Halloween, I think, will do well. I don't know that I'd put that at the top.
I think it could be a sleeper number 5.
You think?
I think those Halloween movies are really hard to project. Not just Halloween films with Jamie Lee Curtis, but films for the Halloween genre. Those October releases that are specifically to scare people and sell tickets to teenagers are very hard to predict.
Yeah.
Truth or Dare, almost $100 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of death.
Terrible film. The Nun, terrible film. Gonna break $100 million probably by next weekend.
I could easily see something like The Grinch doing really well. When the fall is so focused on adult fare, holiday material for children, that could succeed.
Yeah. It's. I don't know if it's gonna do most of its damage before the end of the year, is the thing. That's where it gets interesting. Like, the Nutcracker, I would almost have pegged for, like, number 4. But I don't know that it'll get there before the end of the year. Something like Venom is very interesting to consider because it is a mature Marvel film. But it's a Marvel film. So, what's its floor? Something like...
Yeah.
I think Ant-Man set the precedent at $600 million in earnings.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp did this year.
Yeah.
That's like one of the lowest budget Marvel films.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to look at the list.
Sorry.
It's easy to look at the list and just think about what these movies will be. And then separately just think about which ones are just going to have boatloads of money behind them. And Venom is probably one of those.
I think it's kind of a safe bet for number 3, but what's going to be number 2, right? We know what's number 1.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be Fantastic Beasts, but where's number 2 at? Is it a sleeper like Creed or Robin Hood? Something really shiny, kind of for the millennial?
Yeah, I could easily see Creed 2. I think Michael B. Jordan's riding a wave at the moment.
He is. I do think people will show up for the Black Panther.
I do.
That is interesting to consider. And the Ivan Drago. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but Drago's back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did see that. But yeah, Halloween's interesting. That just sort of depends on release dates, right? If people want to go see a scary movie on Halloween, they see a movie called Halloween.
Yep.
Seems like a safe choice.
It does. So we're not thinking that any of the award season fare is going to break it. Stars Born, First Man, Wildlife, Serenity, Suspiria, Burning, Shoplifters, Widows, the Bohemian Rhapsody film with Rami Malek.
I don't think so. I think some of that marketing might be more specifically targeted for awards audiences rather than a mass market.
Yeah.
So I think would limit its upside. Yeah. But they're the ones that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I guess like The Darkest Hour didn't get extra viewings because Gary won the award probably.
Yeah, exactly. Lots to see.
You do this often? Kidnapping people off the street and interrogate them. You're my first one, actually. How am I doing?
Let's hop over to Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan.
The Krasinski himself. What'd you think?
Right. I thought this was just fine. I thought this was exactly what I was expecting. I think it executed. It did not bring anything to the table that really surprised me, but I believed John Krasinski as Jack Ryan. I am not quite sure why this would strike a chord with the culture at the moment, but can imagine it finding an audience nonetheless that will stick with it.
I think it's particularly acceptable, and I think that the audience that you can't find is an audience that you maybe don't tap into the same veins of appreciation, which would be middle America.
Yeah, that's possible.
Jack Ryan is bound up in baseball and being a good guy and asking a girl out on a date and making sure that her dad won't hate him if he does. It's just this really simple, classical American kind of 1920s feel to it.
Yeah. I think everyone was kind of wondering, like, can John Krasinski play the leading man role in an action series? I thought he was fine. I did not have a problem with it. I thought the sensibility carried over nicely, actually.
It's not an action series to me yet, either.
You've seen one more episode,
I'm 2 episodes in, but it's still not an action series. It's a series where actions are taken, and it's a man who doesn't want to act being driven to. I think that's why it's good, almost.
Yeah,
almost good.
Being dragged into something he does not necessarily want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like how he's always wearing his bulletproof vest. He's always more likely to not shoot than to shoot. You know, these things make him more believable, or make the world more believable to me. That these deaths come as accidents, and that they actually cause people to behave differently. But as you get further in, there's more of these deaths that don't really pay off anywhere. They're just kind of shock and awe. Yeah. And then I accidentally saw a trailer somehow for Jack Ryan that ends up showing things that are going to happen way later in the series. That kind of ruined it for me. I was like, not fun. These characters come together? That's and he's cool. The hero? This is terrible.
That's not
So I'm kind of disillusioned with the show. I don't think I'm going to continue it.
Yeah.
But I see its global appeal that Amazon pursued and delayed to get. I don't exactly know the release strategy, but I know that they spent, I think it was either $8 or $10 million per episode.
Yeah. And it shows. I think the production value is apparent. I don't know if that's like a critique or a good thing.
Apparent.
Not
you
so
know
much.
What I mean? Like a Quiet Place was 15 million bones, and I think that's a lot better than 2 episodes of This Is.
Yeah. But if you're coming to see explosions, you get explosions.
Yeah, but not that great of explosions. Like, I'd put up Armageddon's explosions from 20 years ago against these.
Yeah. Didn't like the carpet bombing at
no, I didn't.
Of episode 1.
I don't know if it's because of the color thing or not.
Yeah.
But it looks particularly CG to me. It looks like a TV effect. I watch a fair amount of television though, so I do make distinctions between a television explosion and a non-television explosion, and I think something like Tropic Thunder makes that very apparent, where they're making fun of explosions.
Yeah. Did you watch Homeland at all?
I love Homeland.
You did?
I did.
So, like, I keep hearing people talk about Jack Ryan in relation to Homeland, right?
I was thinking about that earlier today.
If Lord of the Rings is, an attempt to pull audiences who are interested in something like Game of Thrones, Jack Ryan is an attempt to pull audiences who are interested in something like Homeland.
That's a terrible decision, because Homeland barely has a big enough audience to keep going every year.
Yeah, it's Showtime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think, the story of Middle Eastern conflict is something that's just that the zeitgeist is really craving at the moment.
I don't think that most people where we live are craving it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That's true.
Because we don't live in middle America. We're not tapped into those venues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, shit, dude, Operation Red Sea. China did big business, $500 million of American USD murdering the Middle East in a propaganda film, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, before even kind of like diving into the particulars of the series, like, one thing we haven't really talked about, like, at the outset of some of these movies or series is just like whether or not these are stories that we even want to hear, regardless of how well executed they are. When there are so many stories out there, I don't know that this would be at the top of my list.
Well, when you say if it's a story you want to hear, I personally have kind of an oscillating tone of what I like to take in. I go through phases where I'll read way too much for 6 months at a time and finish more books in that 6 months than I will in another year and a half. And then I'll do the same with television or film. So I'll go in these stages, and maybe I don't particularly want them Crazy Rich Asians right now. But maybe in a year when I'm stressed out and I just want something to chill back, relax, listen to music, and look at food and kind of understand the story, I will want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I will want the Meg when I'm raising a 4-year-old and at the end of my rope and on 3 hours sleep. Maybe I will want Jack Ryan when maybe I would want Jack Ryan if I didn't have the time to become familiar with these situations, both abroad and at home, and how these interactions are happening in my free time. I have that free time. I'm fairly caught up on exactly what's happening at a homeland security level, nationally and abroad, with where these ideas are in their scriptures and why they're doing these things and what the backbone reasonable reasons are. So a question like that is hard for me to grapple with.
Yeah. It's not broadcast television where you have to wait for reruns. It's not a theatrical release where you got to catch it while you can. It's on there for whenever you want it. So when people decide this is what they want to hear, they'll watch it. I'm not presently terribly interested in this story, I don't think. But just like you said, I mean, we change as the content changes, so...
Or just we change, over time, regardless of content. I mean, who knows if it's going to continue to change as rapidly as it is, or if it will begin to die down as globalism begins to settle in and we actually get a better look at these markets. Yeah. Right now, it's kind of guess and check work. I think soon we'll have a little bit more legitimate work. I don't know how much longer Netflix can not be transparent with their earnings reports. These types
or just
of things.
Streaming figures,
Well, that's what I meant by earnings reports. Stream's first budget. So I don't know. I see my dad or most men over 50 finding this fine because it makes a compassionate case, not a terribly humanist case, but a compassionate case for people that are victims of American drone strikes and bomb runs, carpet bombings, as you referenced earlier. And also a guy trying to figure out how to do the right thing without doing the wrong thing, which I think a lot of Americans gravitate towards, kind of like an Armageddon.
This is much less about his physique or strength or success in the battlefield. Jack Ryan in this case seems to be proving his patriotism through moral courage, which is distinct. I mean, you're right. I do think there is an audience who is more interested in that kind of narrative. That's almost more Spielbergian.
Yes.
With something like it's too big of a leap. I was going to say The Post. This is about people who
I don't think that's too big of a leap.
Who are taking principled stands, and it's about their commitment to their value system rather than their willingness to pull out a gun or something like that.
I think
it's an action series. We can do. I guess maybe that's not the right term for you, but for a series with lots of action, our hero is not deferring to action necessarily, from my impression thus far.
I think that there's a stronger similarity behind Spielberg's techniques, but I do think that it's a heroism from the lack of behaving classically heroic. Yeah. And that's what's making him a classic hero. But I think that it's iconography, heroic iconography that Spielberg uses in The Post, that also Jack Ryan's using. So I think behind the facade of the stories, they're showing us images of kind of classical America in The Post. Yeah. And people doing things against the system to be heroes. In what's his name from The Americans, in that expository scene in Spielberg's The Post, where he's in Vietnam as the war journalist.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about.
And then in Jack Ryan, we do have these prequel flashes to someone kind of doing the same thing, where someone's dying in a deplorable manner, and it's is it the wrong person? Who knows? But even if it's not the wrong person, maybe they got the right place. Does that still mean that this kid should die? This is an older idea that's, it's been an eagle eye. It's been in a lot of things. And it's still something that's troubling. Yeah.
But you don't think you'll stick with it?
I will catch up with it, but I won't catch up with it this year.
Yeah,
Taylor's going for 1,000 movies this year, and I don't have time for 6 more hours that I could spend watching shorts to catch up.
You got priorities.
1,000. I took the last 2 days off for movies. I got a long week lined up.
You got work to do. Closing thoughts? Any or more thoughts on Jack Ryan? Don't mean to cut you off.
I don't think I have too many more thoughts on Jack Ryan. Yeah. I think that your Spielberg comparison is interesting, though, just because of Krasinski as a performer. I think in his tone is similar to Spielberg's tone with his lens. I think that's kind of an interesting comparison to think about. And also, I'd like to see them team up.
Oh, I could totally see that.
Once he's
he
done
would
with
have
the Star
fit
Wars.
in the Post just fine.
Oh, he could have been the Post.
Yeah.
I'm the newspaper. I'm John Krasinski. Would you like some paper for your newspaper from Dunder and Mifflin?
Yeah, I mean, is there something like Tom Hanks about him in a way?
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that
Could have a big career
goddamn
ahead of him.
American approachability.
Yep.
Just normal guy. So let's get to consensus rankings. Yeah?
Let's do it.
The Meg. 2.75. 3 from me. 2.5 from you. Crazy Rich Asians. Right down the middle. 2.5, baby.
Line drive.
2.5 from each of us. Avengers Infinity War. 3 consensus rating. I gave it a 4. You gave it a 2. I think the listeners will be interested to hear if that changes as you watch other films and begin to contextualize some of these ideas that are in the film.
Yeah, for sure.
Armageddon. You had a 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 4. 3.75.
Pretty close.
I think that's going to be our highest rated film, Armageddon. A Michael
All
Bay
right.
movie is our highest rated movie this week.
Whoa.
That will never happen again unless we watch Alcatraz or The Rock against like 3 bad movies, probably.
I was not expecting to be a pro Michael Bay podcast.
But
here we are.
We're the Bays of Bay.
That's us.
Jack Ryan, episode 1, we each gave it a 3.
Yeah.
It's rolling with a 3.
It is just fine.
So, I guess that's the end of Globalism. Hopefully we'll have more to talk about referring to this episode moving forward as award season rolls around and we see how awards nominations and considerations play into how these films perform and whether or not they have a gain and traction.
Yeah.
Like I referenced earlier, Manchester by the Sea, I think, is one of the most interesting cases of a film that would have made $20 million, making a boatload more than it would have because of its nominations and considerations.
Yeah.
And then, the opposite with Ghost Story hereafter.
Yeah, I thought this was going to play a role in any conversation we had about a most popular film category until I learned that they have nixed that category after all.
That category for this year.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
who knows?
We'll
They'll come up with some other, bizarre choice.
We can play a fun end of the game here if we have the time. But I think that we'll be busy explaining our top 10 films of the year and trying to have a 3-way tie.
Yeah. But yeah, we have been less focused on blockbusters of these sorts thus far, so this is a nice way to contextualize what we'll be talking about for the rest of the year.
Since we're not going to get back to blockbusters probably for another 3 weeks, I would assume, unless we want to count The Predator as a blockbuster, which it might be. That'd be nice for Shane Black.
For the month it's coming out in, it's certainly the blockbuster
so far
of its time. Yeah.
Unless White Boy Rick overperforms.
Who knows?
Always a chance.
White Boy Rick, let's do this.
So you want to tell the audience what's on tap next week?
Next week, we will be reviewing The Predator, the new release in the franchise, as well as the original Predator with Schwarzenegger himself, as well as
A Simple Favor with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively against the classic film from Steven Soderbergh, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, as well as
Brian De Palma's film Dressed to Kill, HBO anthology Room 104
from the Duplass brothers. And Dressed to Kill is going to continue kind of a small vein we have of De Palma.
Yeah. I'm a little excited about De Palma at the moment, so I thought it'd be fun to run with him.
Once we're done, we'll get back over to Malick like we'd always originally intended, but I think we might go on our De Palma run for a little bit here.
Let's keep it going.
All right. Well, this has been Drinkin' the Movies, episode 7.
With Taylor.
And Michael.
We'll see you next week.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
Nailed it.
Did you get it?
Get what? Just kill a bunch of people? Not cool.